Chapter 205. Oh my god! The old man in the painting is by Changchun? Are you kidding me? There's such a powerful guy in the four major clans? Is he the Bai Changchun that I know? He's a terrifying existence that could shake the entire Phantom region. You, Bai. Brother Bai Changchun is your ancestor? Yu Qianqiu tried to control his emotions, but he still stuttered. Yes. Bai Zitsong looked at the painting and asked doubtfully. My ancestor has passed away for more than 2,000 years. Could it be that brother Yu has heard of my ancestor? Died for more than 2,000 years? So it's not the same person. That scared me to death. I was wondering, with such a terrifying guy around, the four major clans would be able to do whatever they want in the cultivation world. There's no need to keep such a low profile. Yu Qianqiu heaved a sigh of relief and wiped his forehead subconsciously. No. I just happen to know someone with the same name as your ancestor. He's still alive and well. By the way, who's Tan Xiao? Is he the ancestor of the Tan clan? He quickly changed the topic. He had no choice but to change the topic. Bai Changchun's reputation made people feel guilty. It was fine if they didn't know him, but they knew how terrifying he was. For example, at today's auction, he only vaguely borrowed his prestige, but he scared the number one sects of the righteous and demonic sects into silence. Amazing! Bai Zitsong hesitated for a while. He didn't know if he should say it. He turned to look at Wuxia, who nodded in agreement. He smiled and said, It's Tan Fei's ancestor. He's from the same generation as my ancestor. Ancestor Tan Fei was skilled in painting. He painted 4 similar paintings, and they're placed in the ancestral halls of the 4 major clans. Good painting, good painting. Since he's Brother Bai's ancestor, I'll offer some incense to show my respect. Yu Qianqiu smiled and took the incense from his hand. After lighting it on the incense table, he bowed 3 times on the cattail hassock and lit the incense. At the side, Wu Sihai looked at the portrait and then looked at Yu Qianqiu. He frowned. After Yu Qianqiu finished offering the incense, he suddenly said in a deep voice, Yu Qianqiu, where is the person with the same name as the Bai family's ancestor? Yu Qianqiu had just turned around, but his face stiffened when he heard that. He smiled awkwardly and said, I can't remember it either. I think it was some barren land. Old master, why are you asking this? Wu Sihai's eyes flickered as he stared at him. Finally, he shifted his attention to the portrait and said leisurely, The Bai family's ancestor was gifted by the heavens. He was a rogue cultivator. When he was over 200 years old, his cultivation reached the final stage of tribulation passing. His xian skill was rare in the world, but he didn't learn it from others. He created it himself by misleading the heavenly Tao. With such talent, he should be famous in the cultivation world, but he didn't like to show off. Therefore, few people in the cultivation world know Bai Changchun's name. Even if there are people who know him, they're all defeated by him. Presumably, he wouldn't show off. Now he's gone. He's indeed a talent. Yu Qianqiu praised the portrait, but his heart was beating fast. Could this Bai Changchun really be the Bai Changchun from before? He scratched his head and asked, Old master, what do you mean by telling me this? Bai Zitsong and the others also looked at Wu Sihai. They didn't know why he suddenly said this. Yu Qianqiu, you must have heard of a rumor? Wu Sihai asked. Yu Qianqiu was stunned and said, What rumor? There's a rumor that the Tan, Jing, and Wu families originated from the Bai family. I can tell you clearly that this rumor is true. The ancestors of the 3 families were originally the followers of the Bai family's ancestor. They had always been by his side and listened to his orders. It could also be said that the ancestors of the 3 families were the disciples of the Bai family's ancestor. Unfortunately, the Bai family's ancestors' xian skills were all comprehended from the heavenly Tao. It's different from the current cultivation world's method of increasing cultivation by accumulating spiritual qi over a long period of time. It could be said that it was a different path on the path of cultivation. It's not something that can be learned just because you want to learn it. He can show you the way, but in the end, it's still up to you to understand it. Once you understand it, your cultivation will advance by leaps and bounds. Unfortunately, no one in the 3 families, including the main Bai family, has this kind of understanding in the past 2,000 years. Wu Sihai shook his head and sighed. There's such a cultivation method? Yu Qianqiu was speechless. He thought, could it be the same as the legendary enlightenment in his previous life? Once enlightened, one can ascend to the heavens? Wu Sihai nodded and sighed. When the Bai family's ancestor reached 300 years old, one day, he suddenly dismissed the three families. He asked us to establish our own sects in the cultivation world and support each other. He said that he suddenly had an epiphany and was going to cultivate in seclusion and not care about the world. The three families obeyed his order, but the cultivation world is a dog-eat-dog world. It's really difficult to establish a sect. Therefore, the Bai family's ancestor flew all over the world for a few days and secretly challenged the heads and top experts of the 10 major sects of the righteous and demonic sections. Within 3 moves, he forced them to swear a venomous oath to keep this secret. He also restricted their sects to not provoke the 4 major families for no reason during their lifetime. Because of this, the 4 major families got the opportunity to start developing. And that's how the 4 major families came to be today. Bai Zizong and the others heard this and their faces were full of pride. The descendants benefited from the ancestors' methods. On the other hand, Yu Qianqiu was shocked. The 10 major sects were full of hidden dragons and crouching tigers. The experts who cultivated in seclusion could not be estimated by outsiders. Moreover, it was inevitable that they would have some treasures in their hands. He had personally experienced on Guangsong, but none of the experts from the 10 major sects of the righteous and demonic sects could last more than 3 moves against Bai Changchun. Oh my God! What kind of method is this? How powerful was he in the past? Yu Qianqiu gulped and said, it's a pity that none of the 4 major families could inherit the Bai family's ancestors' Xian technique. What a pity, what a pity! It's easier said than done. Wu Sihai shook his head and said, it's because it's difficult. In order to maintain our current status, the 4 major families have no choice but to rely on spiritual energy to cultivate like other cultivators. Otherwise, the 4 major families would have disappeared long ago. Yu Qianqiu sighed and suddenly said, Old man, this is the secret of the 4 major families. Why are you telling an outsider like me? Because you said you know a person named Bai Changchun. I want to know where he is. Wu Sihai stared at him and said. Yu Qianqiu smiled and said, I know of such a person. But you can't be thinking that he is the same person as the Bai family's ancestor, right? Do you really think someone can live for more than 2,000 years? The others also agreed with Yu Qianqiu's words and looked at Wu Sihai doubtfully. It's very possible. Wu Sihai nodded seriously. Yu Qianqiu's heart was thumping. He was almost sure that they were the same person. Otherwise, how could there be 2 people with the same name and surname? The probability of this was almost 0. However, he still put on a look of disbelief because he really did not want such a terrifying person to be used by others. Just thinking about it made him uncomfortable. Bai Zizong and the others also did not believe it. Wu Sihai sighed and said, when the 4 major families started to stabilize, the Bai family's ancestor gathered the 4 of them together and told them that he was very likely to break through to the legendary demigod stage. However, the Tao was ruthless. He needed to cut off all worldly ties and have no distractions in his heart. Only then could he concentrate on his cultivation. He also told the 4 of them to support each other from now on. He would no longer interfere with worldly affairs and told them to take care of themselves. Just like that, the Bai family's ancestor floated away and disappeared without a trace. Seeing that he still didn't want to say it, Wu Sihai paused for a moment and took out a storage bag and threw it over, saying, Today's auction made you suffer some losses. This is the 10 million high-grade spirit stones that my Wu clan will return to you as compensation. Yu Qianqiu hugged the storage bag and smiled, saying, This is a good relationship and I'm in need of money to spend. The 4 of them felt disgusted. You're in need of money to spend? Wu Sihai shook his head and smiled bitterly. He brought Yu Qianqiu here because he wanted to show his sincerity and say some nice words to strengthen the relationship between Wu Liqing and the others. Of course, this was because he fancied the faint force behind Yu Qianqiu. But the previous episode made some things clear. For example, the force behind you. If he said nice words now, It would make the other party think that he fancied the force behind you, and that wouldn't be good. Since that was the case, he might as well let nature take its course. They didn't know that Yu Qianqiu wanted them to think that he had a powerful force behind him, who asked him to not be powerful at all, and he could only do things like using the name of the world's #1 faction, Fuxian Island. He wasn't afraid of stirring up trouble outside, because he had a backer. Otherwise, he would have been hunted down long ago. How could he still be leisurely here? Old man, why are there 5 artifacts refined by divine craftsmen in today's auction? They might not be top-notch artifacts, but they are all ancient artifacts. Don't you think it's strange? Yu Qianqiu suddenly asked. Aren't these 5 items all yours? Why do you care so much? Wuxia said in a bad mood. It was obvious that he was still a little angry that Yu Qianqiu didn't want to reveal Bai Changchun's whereabouts. Yu Qianqiu pretended that he didn't hear it and continued to ask, Old man, could it be that they were all taken out by the same person? Wuxia made a non-committal, oh sound, which could be considered as an admission. Yu Qianqiu's eyes lit up, and he didn't want to let it go. Who is it? The former coughed and said, This concerns the reputation of my Wu clan's auction house. Don't ask about this, and I won't tell you even if you ask. Unless you tell me the whereabouts of Bai Changchun, I can consider telling you about the seller. Bullsh *T reputation, old fox. If you don't tell me, I won't ask anymore. What does it have to do with me who the seller is? Yu Qianqiu scratched his head and acted as though the weather outside was very good. He said, Old man, if there is nothing else, I will go back first. In fact, the topic that Yu Qianqiu just asked also caused a lot of commotion among the other people who participated in the auction today. 5 treasures refined by a divine craftsman actually appeared at once. If there were other things like spiritual treasures, it would be a big problem that was enough to affect the entire cultivation world. There was also the appearance of 2,000 top-grade spirit stones. Did this mean that there might be a top-grade spirit stone mine? If any sect could get their hands on it, their overall strength would definitely soar. In places like the 100 Flowers Valley and Hat Island, almost every sect had a shop. Sometimes, they didn't care about how much money they could make, but mainly to ensure the smooth flow of information. Therefore, almost every shop had a kind of communication array. The cost of setting up this array was quite high, so some sects that were too weak couldn't afford it at all. The news was constantly sent back to the sects from those people. And the sects also sent a large number of people to inquire everywhere. For a time, the silent cultivation world was completely lively. At night, Yu Qianqiu was in the bedroom of the quiet guest house. He couldn't calm down to cultivate at all. He was really affected by some things that happened during the day. He had seen the financial resources of those big sects in today's auction. If he hadn't happened to find the top-grade spirit stone mine in the demon ghost domain, he wouldn't even be worthy to carry their shoes. They were really big sects with deep roots in the cultivation world. He believed that the financial resources they showed were only a part of their strength. Moreover, most of the sects had their own spirit stone mine, which could continuously accumulate wealth. But his own money was going to be less every time he used it. It couldn't be regenerated. There was also the mysterious seller. He didn't know if he had other more powerful magic treasures refined by other divine craftsmen. What shocked him the most was Wuxia's words. Bai Changchun was actually a rogue cultivator, who had cultivated to the soul formation stage. At the age of 200, his cultivation had reached the late stage of the crossing calamity stage. This was simply incredible, not to mention that he was a rogue cultivator without the support of a sect. When he was 300 years old, he was able to challenge the top experts of the righteous and devil sects alone, and none of them could take more than 3 moves from him. Yu Qianqiu sat cross-legged on the bed with his eyes closed, murmuring to himself, The great Tao, the heavenly Tao, the Tao of 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 Tao, the enlightenment, the cultivation of 1,000 miles in a day, the creation of a mystic technique. Damn it! I wonder what kind of secret art this self-created Xian art is. Isn't it a little too awesome? If I had known earlier, I would have memorized the Tao Te Ching in my previous life. Who knows, I might have been able to create some kind of Xian technique now. AI. I can't stand it. It's so exciting. Chapter 207. After tossing and turning for half a night, he was unable to meditate. He wanted to sleep without a care in the world, but his mind was full of magic skills, and he had a belly full of evil fire. He got up and listened carefully. It was quiet outside, so he disappeared from the bed and appeared directly in Chu Ping-er's room. Chu Ping-er, who was meditating, suddenly heard movement beside her and was startled. Before she could react, a hand covered her mouth, followed by the familiar smell of a man. Then another hand reached into her collar and rubbed her chest wantonly. Chu Ping-er immediately leaned back in the man's arms and let him take off her clothes. The room was filled with the panting and moaning of spring. After venting, Yu Qianqiu felt much better. He used his divine sense to sweep the entire misty palace, and found that his parents and brother were already asleep. Then he swept past Bai Suzhen's room, but found that she was not in the room. He was slightly stunned and immediately released his divine sense to check. On the cliff opposite the misty palace, a white figure was playing the zither and singing under the moonlight. Who else could it be but Bai Suzhen? Yu Qianqiu gently pushed away the plump, white and tender naked body that refused to let go and said, "You sleep first, I have something to do at Guan Yu's place." Okay. Chu Ping-er was extremely sad and let go of him reluctantly. He smiled guiltily and apologetically, put on his clothes and disappeared, leaving a stunning beauty alone on the bed, hugging the pillow he had just slept on. "So I am indifferent to prosperity, only happy for you. I want to accompany you away from loneliness and freedom." Bai Suzhen finished singing, and her jade-like fingers strummed the strings, echoing faintly. She asked without turning her head, "The song is very nice, I like it very much. You haven't told me what the name is." "You mean the name of the song?" Yu Qianqiu was stunned. Bai Suzhen turned her head and looked at him, as if she had already known that he was coming. Her beautiful face smiled against the silver moonlight, and she nodded. Let me think." Yu Qianqiu scratched his head. He really didn't remember which song it was pirated from when she suddenly asked him. Fortunately, he remembered in time and nodded. "Go back. Gui Qilai." Bai Suzhen furrowed her brows and murmured to herself. Then her brows relaxed and she smiled gently under the moonlight. She sighed and said, "I'm afraid no one in this world can compare to you in terms of musical attainments." Yu Qianqiu was a little embarrassed by her words. Fortunately, he was used to being thick-skinned, so if he did not look carefully, he would not be able to tell. He smiled awkwardly and said, "Whether this thing is good or bad, it can't be eaten, and it can't be used to improve one's cultivation. It's just something I made casually. Sister, you don't have to take it to heart." Bai Suzhen smiled faintly and looked into the distance, feeling the night wind blowing. Yu Qianqiu was stunned. He took out the items from his storage pouch and placed them on the zither. He smiled and said, "I bought them for you. Give them to Chu Ping-er. I don't need these things." Bai Suzhen lowered her head and glanced at them. Before she finished speaking, she suddenly stood up. She stared at the items on the zither as if she was struck by lightning. Her voice trembled as she said, "Cloud-chasing hairpin, Qiyun handkerchief, snow luo gown, snow long damask." Yu Qianqiu was a little shocked. This was an ancient item. How could anyone tell what it was with a single glance? Furthermore, she looked very excited. Yu Qianqiu could not help but ask curiously, "Sis, have you seen these things before? How did these things end up in your hands? How could these things end up in your hands? Tell me, how did you get them?" Bai Suzhen's voice became more and more excited. Her hands, which were half out of her white sleeves, were slightly trembling. "Sister, what's wrong?" Yu Qianqiu also became a little nervous. Bai Suzhen grabbed him and almost begged, "Quickly tell me, how did you get them?" "These are things I bought from the auction house." "Sister, calm down. What's wrong? What does these things have to do with you?" Yu Qianqiu's hands steadied her shoulders. "You bought them from the auction house?" Bai Suzhen broke free from his hands and picked up the snow luo gown. She flipped open the waistband and under the moonlight, she could clearly see the two words "Little Snow." She immediately shook her head in a daze and said, "Impossible, impossible, you're lying to me. How could the auction house have these things? How could these things be auctioned? You're lying." Seeing that she was about to lose control of her emotions, Yu Qianqiu suddenly opened his arms and pulled her into his embrace tightly. He said in a low voice, "Calm down, calm down, calm down. Tell me what's going on. What do these things have to do with you?" Bai Suzhen, who was about to struggle, smelled the scent coming from his body, and was instantly startled. Her breathing gradually calmed down, and after a long time, she said, "I'm fine, let go of me." Yu Qianqiu slowly released her and said in a soft voice, "What's going on?" Bai Suzhen gently hugged the snow luo gown and looked into the distance. She said, "These 4 things are treasures that have been passed down through the generations of my fox clan. Although they are not top-grade treasures, they are the tokens of the clan leaders. So only the clan leader has the right to wear and use them. Before I was expelled from the fox clan, these 4 treasures belonged to my mother. Because of me, my mother took them off and gave them to the next clan leader." "You were expelled from the fox clan?" Yu Qianqiu was a little surprised. "Yes." Bai Suzhen slowly told the story. In the bitter cold lands of the far north, there was a group of snow foxes. They were the fox clan that Bai Suzhen was originally from. The fox clan was also part of the Yao clan. The Yao clan had a lifespan that humans could not compare to, and Bai Suzhen had just gained sentience over 1,000 years ago. She was still a little fox and could not take human form. However, she had heard many legends about love between humans from her sisters. There were also stories about the love between the fox clan and humans. It was abnormally sad and mellow. The little fox was curious and full of admiration. She longed to experience the life of humans. So she sneaked out of the far north and ran in the direction of the legendary human residence. But when she finally arrived at the place where humans lived after many hardships, she discovered that everything was not as perfect as she had imagined. Almost all of the humans who saw her would want to kill her. There were sharp arrows flying at her from all directions. And when she hid in the deep mountains and forests, there were ferocious beasts that wanted to prey on her. She was completely panicked. So she ran and ran. She did not know how far she had run. But one day, she was shot by a hunter in a forest. She thought she was going to die, but she was saved by a scholar. The scholar carefully saved her. Just when her injuries were almost healed, her mother, who had planted a strand of divine sense in the little fox's body, found her and brought her back to the fox clan in the far north. Ever since the little fox returned, the image of the scholar had been lingering in her mind. After cultivating for hundreds of years in the extreme north, she had already begun to cultivate. Although she was still unable to transform into a human form, she believed that she could already protect herself. She suggested to her mother that she wanted to repay the scholar's kindness. Her mother smiled and agreed to it, but she also made a request. That was, if she could not find the scholar, she must return. The little fox did not know the affairs of the world. How could she know that her mother agreed so readily? It was because ordinary humans could not live for hundreds of years. When she found the place where the scholar lived, it was already green mountains. Everything remained the same, but the people had changed. After wandering around the area for several years, the little fox was disappointed. She went back to the fox clan to report to her mother. She begged her mother to let her go out to cultivate. Normally, a normal fox clan would not be allowed to do so. But her mother had just taken over the position of clan leader and had some special privileges. She could not resist her daughter's request and agreed. Chapter 208. Thus, she once again went to the place where the scholar had lived. After wandering around for a while, she entered the mountains not far away to cultivate. Time passed quickly in the mountains, and several hundred years passed in the outside world. When she came out of the mountains again, she was a beautiful woman who had taken human form. In the past few hundred years, aside from returning to the Fox clan once every 10 years, she devoted herself to cultivating wholeheartedly. When her mother discovered that her daughter's cultivation outside was actually much faster than in the Fox clan, she acquiesced to her daughter's freedom and allowed her to cultivate outside for long periods of time. Another 10 years later, when she returned from the Fox clan, she went to the place where the scholar had lived. To her surprise, she discovered that a new thatched hut had been built there. Hearing the sound of someone reading a book, she could not help but walk over to take a look. When she looked out the window, her body immediately shook. It was another scholar, and he looked very similar to the one from back then. That scholar had suddenly discovered such a beautiful woman, and was also dumbfounded. Thus, something happened that caused the entire Fox clan to be enraged. The ancestors of this branch of the Fox clan had passed down a strict rule that no matter if the Fox clan was male or female, they were not allowed to have an ill-fated relationship with any human in the secular world. Otherwise, they would be executed. When she returned to the Fox clan, she knew that she would inevitably die, but who would have thought that she would be saved by the male branch of the Fox clan? The Fox clan was split into two branches, male and female. It had always been the female branch that held the position of clan leader. Who would have thought that the head of the male branch would find her mother, who was the clan leader of the entire Fox clan? He said that he was willing to protect her daughter's life, but the condition was that she would pass on the position of clan leader to the male branch. It was natural for one to lick one's calf, so the female clan leader agreed. As a result, the male branch mobilized a powerful force and used more than half of the people to forcefully violate the rules that had been in place for countless years, finally protecting Bai Sujin's life. She could escape punishment, but she could not escape the fate of being banished. Her mother also passed on the 4 treasures of the Snow clan, which symbolized the authority of the clan leader, to the male branch under great pressure. The male branch finally got his wish, and rightfully obtained the position of the clan leader. The rules of the Snow Fox clan that had lasted for countless years were finally broken. Yu Qianqiu knew what happened after that. After listening, Yu Qianqiu couldn't help but sigh. He didn't expect these 4 treasures to have such an origin. No wonder Bai Sujin was so excited. He couldn't help but shake his head and sigh. Since they are the inheritance treasures of your Fox clan, how did they end up here? It must have something to do with the male line of your Fox clan. I don't know. Bai Sujin painfully shook her head and said, "Let me go. I want to go back to the extreme north to take a look. Although I have already been banished from the Fox clan, I want to see what happened to the Fox clan. Why would the inheritance treasures end up in the auction house?" Yu Qianqiu hugged her and sincerely said, "Don't be anxious. Wait until I find out the origin of these 4 treasures. It won't be too late for you to go. Otherwise, you won't be able to come up with any conclusions if you run around without thinking. You have to trust me and wait patiently for a period of time." Bai Sujin clearly didn't want to wait any longer. "Listen to me, okay?" Yu Qianqiu indifferently said to her. Bai Sujin seemed to have no immunity to his words. She dejectedly lowered her head and agreed. Yu Qianqiu suddenly frowned and said, "These 4 treasures have been passed down in your Fox clan for so many years. Could it be that Little Snow is related to your Fox clan?" Bai Sujin, whose emotions had gradually calmed down, suddenly realized that she was in his arms. Her charming face instantly blushed. She slightly lowered her head and replied with her body trembling uncontrollably. "In ancient times, Little Snow was a member of my Fox clan. Legend has it that she was a soul formation stage expert of my Fox clan. Later on, she followed a human man called Embark to cultivate. When she returned, she used her martial power to unite the Fox clan that was originally scattered in the extreme north. That was how the extreme north unified the Snow Fox clan. Those clan rules that were passed down were set by her." "Little Snow is also from the Fox clan?" Yu Qianqiu was stunned. So the divine craftsman was as great as him. He also had a fox spirit with a profound cultivation by his side. "That's right. Our Fox clan doesn't know how to refine weapons. Most of the treasures we use are refined by that human called Embark. They were brought back by Little Snow. Other than what Little Snow used, most of the other treasures have Embark's name on them, including the mountain-piercing claw that you used." Speaking up to here, Bai Sujin took the opportunity to escape from his arms. She took out the mountain-piercing claw and opened it for him to read. Yu Qianqiu looked carefully and found the words Embark in a lighter color. He really didn't expect that he had already used the treasures refined by the divine craftsman. He nodded and sighed. "So that's how it is. I understand. Since these are the treasures of your Fox clan, you can keep them first." Looking at the sky that was already slightly brightening, he continued, "I will go and find out how these treasures got here." Don't worry and leave it to me. Oh right, I still need you to take care of my family. After saying that, he disappeared. In fact, the last sentence was because he was afraid that she would miss her clan too much, so he purposely told her to do something to distract her. After Yu Qianqiu returned, he sorted out the details of the whole matter. He opened the door and directly knocked on the door of Wu Liqing's room, who was accompanying guests at the quiet guest house. The latter heard the sound and opened the door. He was stunned and said, Yu Qianqiu? What's the matter? Bring me to your grandfather. I have something to talk to him about, Yu Qianqiu said directly. Now, Wu Liqing looked at the sky outside and said doubtfully, Isn't it a little too early? The commotion here had also attracted Bai Zizong and the other two. They all asked, What's the matter? Yu Qianqiu ignored the others and dragged him out. Don't be so long-winded. I have something important to talk to your grandfather about. Bring me there quickly. Wu Liqing helplessly led him and the others out of the quiet guest house. After arriving at the living room of the largest manor in the Wu clan, he asked him to wait for a while, and went to look for his grandfather. Not long after, Wu Sihai arrived. He also looked at the sky, then looked at Yu Qianqiu and asked curiously, What do you want from me? Yu Qianqiu rolled his eyes and said, If there's nothing important, why would I disturb you so early in the morning? Wu Sihai smiled and said, Oh. He looked at the others and said, What's the matter? Do you want to avoid them? We are all brothers. There's no need to avoid them, Yu Qianqiu said indifferently. The others looked at each other and felt a little warmth in their hearts. It must be something important to look for me at this time. Come with me. This is not the place to talk, Wu Sihai said and led them to a secret room. He turned around and asked, What's the matter? Just say it. Yu Qianqiu looked at him and said bluntly, I want to know who the seller of the 4 sets of treasures is. Bai Zizong and the others looked at each other. Why did he ask this again at this time? Wu Sihai was startled. He put his hands behind his back and shook his head with a smile. I already said that I can't tell you about this. This matter concerns the reputation of the entire Wu clan auction house. Moreover, the seller didn't show his face from the beginning. How can I know who it is? Someone auctioned 5 artifacts refined by a divine craftsman at once. How can you not know who it is? Even if you haven't seen it before, I believe that even if a bird flew across your Wu clan's territory, you would be able to tell its gender, let alone a living person. Otherwise, this place wouldn't be called the Wu clan's territory. Alright, we are going a little too far. I promised you that as long as you tell me who the seller of these 4 treasures is, I will tell you Bai Changchun's whereabouts. After Yu Qianqiu finished speaking, he was afraid that it wasn't enough, so he added, I can basically confirm that this Bai Changchun is the ancestor of the Bai family. His cultivation has indeed reached the soul formation stage, I can guarantee you this. Ah! The others exclaimed in unison. This news was too important to the 4 major clans. Wu Sihai lost his composure and asked, Are you serious? Don't worry. I am a man of my words. Even if I don't give face to the Wu clan patriarch, I will still give face to my 4 brothers. I won't lie to you. Yu Qianqiu smiled indifferently. What he was implying was that he didn't associate with the 4 major clans because of the power of the 4 major clans. Chapter 209. Wu Sihai hesitated for a moment, and then a trace of decisiveness flashed through his eyes. He nodded and said, Deal. As expected of someone who's used to doing business. Yu Qianqiu smiled and said, Lord Master, who exactly is that person? Wu Sihai's expression was solemn as he said, This person has never revealed his true appearance, but as you said, our Wu clan has been operating here for many years. We naturally have our own methods to find out who he is. Not to mention the sudden appearance of a mysterious patron. Even if it's for the safety of our Wu clan, we still have to find out who he is. It's just that we're quite shocked to find out who he is. I hope that you won't drag our Wu clan into this. This person's background isn't simple. Yu Qianqiu waved his hand. I know what to do even without your instructions. It won't be related to your Wu clan. Who is it? Wu Sihai frowned. The young palace master of the 100 Flowers Palace, Yan Juexing. It's him? Yu Qianqiu by Zizong, and the others exclaimed in surprise. The five of them looked at each other, and then they fell silent. They seemed to be surprised, but at the same time, it seemed to be reasonable. Wu Sihai glanced at them and asked, "What's wrong? Do you have a relationship with this person?" "Not really." Wu Liqing shook his head. "This person seems to be very friendly on the surface, and he likes to make friends. What happened to Shui, in the gurgling house is indirectly related to him. She owed him a favor in the 100 Flowers Valley." "Friendly on the surface? What do you mean?" Wu Sihai stared at his grandson and asked. "He's very friendly and smart. He's so smart that I suspect he has ulterior motives, and we don't dare to get too close to him. Brother Yu, on the other hand, eats whatever he wants, and he doesn't hold back." Wu Liqing smiled. Yu Qianqiu glared and pretended to be angry. "What are you talking about? What do you mean I don't hold back? When did I skip your share? Do you think I'm the only one eating?" They looked at each other and were completely speechless, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. In fact, Wu Liqing really wanted to say, "Every time we eat, you eat more than the four of us." "Let's not talk about that for now." Wu Sihai waved his hand and said, "Yu Qianqiu, can you tell me where old ancestor Bai is now?" Yu Qianqiu sighed and said, "Can't you four clans give up on looking for him?" "No." Wu Sihai denied it right away. He sighed deeply and said, "You don't know what Patriarch Bai means to us four clans. It's not that we want to rely on him or anything. It's just that some people in the four clans think that it's meaningless for the four clans to be united for their own benefit. They are encouraging each other to set up their own sections. The situation is getting more and more intense. I don't know how many people are eyeing the four clans covetously." Chapter 210. He was doubting what he had said. Yu Qianqiu smiled. "It's okay if you haven't heard of it. You'll know when you get to the Monster Ghost region." "You're so sure? Have you gone deep into the Monster Ghost region?" Wu Sihai asked. Yu Qianqiu's heart skipped a beat. He curled his lips and said, "I can't say deep. I've been touring around the Monster Ghost region for a few days. I just have some friendship with the Ghost King that you mentioned." Ah. They were shocked again. This guy's secrets had been peeled off one layer after another. Wu Sihai put on a look of disbelief and said, "As far as I know, the 10 Great Monster Kings and the 10 Ghost Kings never interact with people from the outside world. You said that you have some friendship with them. Forgive me for finding it hard to believe. I even doubt that what you said about the Bai clan's ancestor is true." Bai Zizong and the other three looked at Wu Sihai in surprise. They wondered why he would say such rude words. Yu Qianqiu smiled calmly. "Old man, what I said is true. I can't help it if you don't believe me. Time is the best proof. In short, I have a clear conscience." Wu Sihai looked at him and said, "You said that you have some friendship with the Ghost King of the Monster Ghost region. Do you have any evidence that can convince me? If you do, you can show me. It will make me feel at ease." "Old fox." Yu Qianqiu sneered secretly. He scratched his head and smiled bitterly. "I really don't know how to prove it." Old man, among the 10 Ghost Kings of the Monster Ghost region, there's a Ghost General called the Ghost King. Have you heard of him?" "The Ghost General of the Monster Ghost region. He was born at the wrong time. Even after his death, he is always in pain and regrets. He cries every night." Wu Sihai paced and murmured. He suddenly turned around and said, "The Ghost General should be the Ghost King. If you are talking about him, I have heard of him. This Ghost General seems to be the only well-known Ghost King in the Wuxia cultivation world." "You mean him? Do you have some friendship with the Ghost General?" Bai Zizong and the others looked at Yu Qianqiu. The latter nodded and said, "It seems that only he is known in the Wuxia cultivation world. I have some friendship with him, and I have some evidence. I just don't know if you believe me." Wu Sihai raised his eyebrows. Then he calmed down and said calmly, "Then you might as well say it first. It seems that if I don't tell you something, you will treat me as a liar. But let me make it clear in advance. There are some things that only the four families know. Don't tell it to anyone else. Otherwise, don't blame me for not warning you when you get into trouble." Yu Qianqiu warned him deliberately. "Of course." Wu Sihai nodded repeatedly. His eyes had lit up because of his words. Maybe he could know some unknown secrets. People were born to be curious. Yu Qianqiu nodded slightly and said slowly, "This ghost general was a general who fought with the ancestors of the Li family in the previous dynasty. He was defeated and died. By chance, he became a ghost cultivator. After his cultivation was successful, he gathered his old subordinates who died in the battle and gathered hundreds of thousands of ghost cultivators. Finally, he became a ghost king of the monster ghost region. His original name is Mengyan." "What? The ghost general is Mengyan?" Wu Sihai suddenly lost his voice. Yu Qianqiu was stunned and said, "Why? You know him?" But in his heart he muttered, "That's impossible." Wu Sihai said in a deep voice, "In history, there was indeed an iron-blooded general who fought with the Li clan's ancestors for the world. His name was Mengyan. He was supposed to be the winner, but because the cultivation world intervened in the war, he died with a grudge, haha. Your Fuxian Island is the culprit. Continue with what you said." So it was history. Yu Qianqiu rolled his eyes for free and continued. Mengyan had a beautiful concubine named Yuji. The two of them lived happily in the monster ghost region. I have a good relationship with the couple. When I was playing in the monster ghost region, they treated me warmly and gave me a ghost king token. Whether it is a demon or a ghost, they have to give me some face when they see this token. When I was playing in the monster ghost region, I avoided being disappointed by some small fries. That's the general relationship between me and Ghost General. As for whether I can make you believe me or not, I can't do anything about it. He said it casually, but they didn't know that it shocked them. This guy was actually playing in the monster ghost region that everyone in the cultivation world was afraid of. Was there any justice in this world? This sounded a little absurd, but the few of them firmly believed it because the story behind this fellow could not be judged by common sense. Wu Sihai swallowed his saliva and coughed. "Since Ghost General gave you a Ghost King token, I wonder if you can let me take a look. You have to know that the Wu clan is famous for their eyesight. We can tell whether it's real or fake with just one look." Not only him, but even Bai Zizong and the rest felt a little embarrassed. Who knew what the Ghost King token was? No matter how good the old man's eyesight was, he couldn't recognize it, right? The few of them could already guess what he was planning. "Old fox, I knew you would have your eyes on my token. You took the bait." Yu Qianqiu sneered in his heart. He scratched his head and said, "I don't even know if I have it with me. Let me take a look first." He reached into his storage bag and searched for a while. After a while he said, "Found it." A pitch-black token was raised in Yu Qianqiu's hand. There were some simple carvings around it, but in the middle was a pair of deep eyes. It was demonic and captivating. The few of them looked carefully and were immediately stunned. Their expressions gradually became sluggish. Their entire mind was filled with that pair of cold and demonic eyes. Following that, an awe-inspiring general wearing golden armor appeared in their minds and gradually matched the pair of eyes. The general's robe was fluttering behind him. He was holding a sword in his hand. He was staring at them indifferently as if he was looking at a group of ants. "Oh no, there's something strange about this token." Wu Sihai, who was in the middle stage of calamity passing, was shocked. He bit the tip of his tongue. The pain woke him up. As for Bai Zizong and the other three, because their cultivation was not high, their minds were immersed in it and could not extricate themselves. The former blocked in front of the token and shouted, "Wake up!" Bai Zizong and the rest who were mesmerized by the token trembled. They woke up as if they were in a dream. Their faces were filled with disbelief. It really is the Ghost King's token. Wu Sihai turned around and asked, "Can I take a look?" "Old man, it's just a broken token. What's so special about it?" Yu Qianqiu generously gave it to him. "The Ghost King's token is a broken token?" Wu Sihai's face twitched. He took the token and examined it. He tried to avoid looking at the pair of eyes. After a long time he exhaled and praised, "Good stuff. This Ghost King's token is made of the rare nether iron. Normal ghost cultivators can't get their hands on this. It really belongs to the Ghost King." "What's nether iron?" Yu Qianqiu was stunned. It was his first time hearing about it. Wu Sihai held the token and explained, "Ghost cultivators and demon cultivators are different from us cultivators. They don't rely on absorbing spiritual energy to increase their cultivation. They rely on absorbing yin energy. Yin energy usually comes from underground caves. They are divided into 9 levels. The first level is the Nether Cave, the second level is the Nether Cave, and all the way up to the 9 Nether Cave. The higher the level of the cave, the stronger the yin energy and the stronger the yin wind. The 9 Nether Cave is the highest level. Even ghost cultivators at the end of the Ghost King can't withstand it. They will be killed by the yin wind if they dare to enter. Under normal circumstances, ghost cultivators at the end of the Ghost King's cultivation can only stay in the 8 Nether Cave to absorb yin energy. As for the 9 Nether Cave, only the legendary Ghost Sage dares to enter. The Ghost Sage's cultivation is equivalent to our legendary soul-forming stage. This nether iron is a treasure that can only be found in caves that are level 8 and above. Chapter 211. Compared to the mystic gold sand I bought last time, which one is better? Yu Qianqiu asked. Mystic gold sand? Wu Sihai laughed. The two are not on the same level at all. Mystic gold sand can at most be used to refine treasures, while nether iron can be used to refine spiritual treasures. Which one do you think is better? Of course, no matter how good the item is, it needs the skill to refine it. This nether iron has the innate ability to absorb souls. The corpse sect of the demonic Tao has a magic weapon made of nether iron. They have captured many rogue cultivators and absorbed their souls. Those rogue cultivators are like walking corpses, which is why they are ranked 3rd in the demonic Tao. So that's how it is. Yu Qianqiu muttered. Then the next time I meet Ghost General, I will ask him to help me get more nether iron. Although his voice was low, they all looked at each other. It seemed that this guy's relationship with Ghost General was not ordinary. Wu Sihai coughed and said, Yu Qianqiu, can I discuss something with you? Here it comes. The old fox is finally showing his tail. Yu Qianqiu sneered in his heart, but nodded on the surface and said, Just say it, old master. Since both demons and ghosts in the demon region have to show some respect when they see this token, and it is useless to keep it with you, why don't you lend it to the 4 families first? We will return it to you after we find the old ancestor. We will definitely thank you after that. What do you think? Wu Sihai said a little unnaturally. After a long time, they finally got to the point. Bai Zizong and the other 3 turned their heads to the side as if nothing had happened. In fact, if you paid attention, you could see that they were a little embarrassed. Old master, that's a good idea. Yu Qianqiu took the token from his hand and threw it directly into the storage bag. He smiled and said, It's not that I don't want to lend it to you, but this token is useful to me, but it is useless to you. Wu Sihai watched helplessly as the Ghost King token was taken away. He even had the urge to snatch it back. Suppressing his emotions, he frowned and asked, Why do you say that? When Meng Yan gave me the token, he told me again and again not to give it to anyone else. If the 4 great clans go to the Demon Ghost region and flash the Ghost King token, I believe it won't take long for Meng Yan to find out. Once he finds out that the token is in your hands, he believed that Meng Yan's hundreds of thousands of troops were not just for show. At that time, in a fit of rage, Meng Yan has many experts under him. If old master thinks that the 4 great families can fight against Ghost General, I can let you try. What I'm afraid of is that this token won't be of any help to you. It would be bad if you end up attracting even more trouble. That fellow Meng Yan's temper wasn't good. There was also the Demon King Aoli, who shared the same roots as him. Old master, I advise you to give up on this idea. Yu Qianqiu shook his head and smiled. Wu Sihai was a little dumbfounded. He had calculated for a long time and thought that he was close. Who knew that his dream would be destroyed by Yu Qianqiu? After a while he pretended to be nonchalant and asked, Who is the Demon King Aoli? One of the 10 great demon kings? Is his relationship with Ghost General good? Yu Qianqiu nodded and said, Yes. He is one of the 10 great demon kings. He is the lord of a territory with Ghost General. The 2 of them are like brothers. One is in charge of Yang, and the other is in charge of Yin. Ma Jiugu of supporting Immortal Island was defeated by him. Even Ma Jiugu of supporting Immortal Island, who is in the late tribulation passing stage, is no match for Demon King Aoli. Wu Sihai could no longer pretend, and his face twitched. It should be known that Ma Jiugu was the #1 expert not only in supporting Immortal Island, but also in the entire Chinese cultivation world. Her Demon Slayer wand was rarely matched. Unexpectedly, she was defeated by a Demon King who is also in the late tribulation passing stage. The 10 great Demon Kings of the Devil Domain were indeed worthy of their reputation. Wu Sihai sighed softly and looked a little dispirited. One Ghost General was already difficult to deal with. Now there was Demon King Aoli, and there were many Ghost King and Demon Kings. It seemed that even if he knew the whereabouts of the ancestor, it would be difficult to meet him again. Seeing him in a daze, Yu Qianqiu laughed inwardly, but he still put on a serious face and said, "Old master, you don't need to be discouraged. If you really want to go, at worst, I'll accompany your 4 great families to the demon realm after I finish my business." Wu Sihai's eyes lit up and said, "Are you serious?" "What do you mean by serious?" Yu Qianqiu sneered and pointed at Bai Zizong's group of 4. He said, "I only made this trip because of my 4 brothers. Do you think I have nothing better to do after eating my fill?" Bai Zizong and the other 3 were delighted. They exchanged glances and cupped their fists to thank him. Wu Sihai said happily, "What do you want to do? Our 4 families may not be comparable to supporting Immortal Island, but we have some ability. Do you need our help?" "Sure." Yu Qianqiu touched his nose and said seriously, "Using the 4 families is making a mountain out of a molehill. It's enough with your Wu family's help. Old master, can you help me ask Yan Juixing of 100 Flower Palace where he got the 4 treasures of Xiaoshui?" Wu Sihai's smile froze on his face. After a while he said awkwardly, "It's not convenient for my Wu family to take action. Is there anything else that you need my Wu family's help with?" Yu Qianqiu waved his hand indifferently and said, "Forget it. I'll look for you when I have something else. Just don't shirk it again. Hehe. I'll help as long as I can." Wu Sihai smiled awkwardly. He felt that something was wrong no matter how he thought about it. It felt like he was being schemed against by Yu Qianqiu. "Oh. Then I hope that the next time I ask for your help will be within your scope." Yu Qianqiu's tone sounded like he didn't have any hope for the Wu family. The more they talked about it, the more embarrassed Wu Sihai felt. He immediately changed the topic and said, "Why do you want to know where the 4 treasures came from?" Yu Qianqiu squinted his eyes and didn't hide anything. He said in a deep voice, "There's a demon clan in the extreme north called the Snow Fox clan. Xiaoshui, who followed the divine craftsman in ancient times, was the first clan leader of the Snow Fox clan. The 4 treasures that the divine craftsman refined are the tokens of the Snow Fox clan's clan leader. I want to know how the treasures of the Snow Fox clan ended up in Yan Juixing's hands." "Ah, Xiaoshui is from the demon clan?" Wu Sihai was surprised. Bai Zizong and the other 3 looked at each other. Bai Zizong then asked, "The extreme north should be out of the Wuxia Empire's territory. How do you know about it?" "I just heard about it. I was once entrusted by someone, and nearly forgot about it. I only recalled it last night, and came to ask you about it." Yu Qianqiu casually said a few words and cupped his hands. "Let's not talk anymore. I will make a trip back to the 100 Flowers Valley first. I will come back to discuss with the 4 major clans about the trip to the demon region. Wait, I have something to tell you." Wu Sihai stopped Jiang Yi and hesitated for a moment before speaking. "My Wu clan already knows about the Yu clan's matter in Swallowzicheng. I believe the other factions will know soon too. I believe the supporting Immortal Island won't be an exception. There's also Ong Kwangsung. I reckon they won't let you off so easily. You better be careful." Chapter 212. There was a short moment of silence in the secret room. Apart from the Wu clan's grandfather-grandson duo and Yu Qianqiu, Bai Zizong and the others were confused and didn't know what kind of riddle they were playing. Yu Qianqiu's thoughts were spinning rapidly. Even the Wu clan knew about his background, and the supporting Immortal Island naturally wouldn't be able to hide it from them. He sneered and said, "That Lu Chongqing was courting death. He actually dared to extend his claws to my clansmen in the secular world. If I don't kill him, should I let him off? If it's a blessing, it won't be a calamity, and if it's a calamity, it can't be avoided. I hope that Ong Kwangsung knows his place and doesn't provoke me again. If he angers me, I will remove Ong Kwangsung's name from the cultivation world. His words contained traces of chilling intent, and everyone quivered. Bai Zitsung, Tan Fei, and Jingzhou looked at one another in dismay. Ong Kwangsung's patriarch, Lu Chongqing, was actually killed by him. They sighed silently and weren't worried about Yu Qianqiu. Instead, they were worried for Ong Kwangsung. Ong Kwangsung's patriarch was killed, and he definitely wouldn't let Yu Qianqiu off. However, this fellow's background was truly unfathomable. Could Ong Kwangsung win against him? My Wu clan will send a few people to escort you to the 100-Flower Palace. Wu Sihai frowned and said. He was worried that if something happened to Yu Qianqiu, his 4 major clans' trip to the Demon Ghost region would be ruined. Yu Qianqiu waved his hand and said, No need. Ong Kwangsung can't do anything to me. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to stay in the cultivation world. Seeing that he was stubborn, they didn't say anything else and walked out of the secret room. When they walked to the entrance of the main hall, a Wu clan's disciple suddenly ran over and reported, Clan head, Elder Dongfang Chang, AO of Supporting Immortal Island wants us to pass a message to Supporting Immortal Island's disciple Yu Qianqiu, asking him to return to Supporting Immortal Island's shop. Got it. Wu Sihai waved his hand, and the disciple retreated. After confirming that Yu Qianqiu wanted to go back immediately, he cast a spell to the guards on the nearby tower, asking Wu Liqing and the other 3 to lead Yu Qianqiu and fly out on their flying swords. When the 5 of them arrived at Supporting Immortal Island's shop, Wan Yuan was waiting at the entrance, and he immediately brought them to the back of the shop. Dongfang Chang, AO was standing in the courtyard with his hands behind his back, and there were 2 other elders who came with him on both sides. Yu Qianqiu quickly bowed to the 3 of them, and Bai Zitsung and the other 3 bowed in turn and said, The 4 major clans Bai Zitsung, Tan Fei, Jingzhou, and Wu Liqing, greet the 3 seniors. The elders on both sides held the armrests of the 4 of them, indicating that they didn't need to be overly courteous. At this moment, Dongfang Chang, AO turned around and looked at Yu Qianqiu, and he said in a deep voice, Yu Qianqiu, why do you have trouble wherever you go? The moment you arrived at the 100 Flowers Valley, you beat up sect leader Ong Kwangsung's grandson, and when you arrived at Hat Island, you beat up De Luo sect leader's son. Do you think that you haven't caused enough trouble for Supporting Immortal Island? Elder Dongfang, I was forced to do this. These 2 people really deserved a beating, and they were the ones who started it both times. I was just defending myself, otherwise, I would have lost face for Supporting Immortal Island, Yu Qianqiu said with a little grievance. Bai Zitsung and the other 3 were stunned. How was this still the arrogant Yu Qianqiu? Wan Yuan didn't say a word. The other 2 elders looked at each other, and their lips curled into a smile. They were actually very satisfied with Yu Qianqiu's way of doing things. During this period of time, the whole cultivation world was talking about how this disciple of Supporting Immortal Island was doing, beating up this sect leader's son, and then beating up that sect leader's son. Good. He really made Supporting Immortal Island proud. I won't talk about the past. Tell me honestly, did you get into trouble again? Dongfang Chang, AO stared at him and asked. Yu Qianqiu scratched his head and said, No. I have been staying in the Wu clan, and apart from beating up that Luo Xiaohan, I didn't do anything else. Then why did Ong Kwangsung's old ancestor Qing Nu personally come to Supporting Immortal Island to look for you, and even made the sect leader send a message to bring you back to Supporting Immortal Island immediately? Dongfang Chang AO shouted. It was exposed. Bai Zitsung and the other 3 secretly exchanged glances. Yu Qianqiu was stunned, and he said, Ong Kwangsung's old ancestor Qing Nu? I don't even know him. Why is he looking for me? He thought to himself, I have never heard of this person in Ong Kwangsung. Am I asking you, or are you asking me? Dongfang Chang, AO shouted again. Yu Qianqiu said with a bitter face, Elder Dongfang, I am innocent. These few days, I have been following the 4 major clan's successors closely, and I didn't do anything. If you don't believe me, You can ask them. Bai Zitsong and the other three nodded, and they immediately cupped their fists in unison and said, Elder Dongfang, the four of us can testify for Brother Yu. These few days he really didn't do anything out of line. The successors of the four major clans still had some weight. Dongfang Chang'eo looked at them, stood there for a moment, and said in a deep voice, Follow me back to supporting Immortal Island first. We can talk about anything else when we get back. An elder at the side took out a flying artifact that looked like a small boat, and Yu Qianqiu obediently jumped onto it under everyone's gaze. After Dongfang Chang, Ao and the other two got on the boat, the small boat turned into a stream of light and flew away, leaving the people in the courtyard to send them off. Riding the wind, breaking through the clouds, they flew across the sky. Yu Qianqiu sat alone at the end, thinking about how to explain when he got back. Ong Kwangsung's old ancestor Qing Nu came to supporting Immortal Island. Needless to say, Lu Chongqing's matter was exposed. Sigh. Looks like the matter of finding Yan Juexing will have to be postponed. When they returned to supporting Immortal Island, the small boat directly landed in front of Penglai Pavilion, and they got off. Dongfang Chang, Ao led him upstairs and the other two didn't follow. They didn't go to the sect master's room, but to a large room that was used to receive guests. As soon as they entered, Yu Qianqiu realized that the atmosphere inside was a little strange, and he secretly thought that something was wrong. After Dongfang Chang, Ao reported to the sect master. He also bowed to everyone. When he retreated to the side, the room was full of familiar people, including Master Guan Weiwu and Ferdinand. The two of them looked at him with a strange expression, but he didn't see a tall, white-haired old man in a green robe. He was standing beside sect master Feng Xiangtian, sizing him up. He must be Ong Kwangsung's old ancestor Qing Nu. Feng Xiangtian frowned and said, Yu Qianqiu, do you know your mistake? I know my mistake. Yu Qianqiu hurriedly bowed. Everyone in the room was stunned, but they heard him say, Disciple shouldn't have caused trouble outside and brought trouble to the sect. Sect master, please give disciple another chance. Disciple will definitely change for the better. So, did you really kill Ong Kwangsung's sect master Lu Chongqing? Feng Xiangtian said in a deep voice. Dongfang Chang'eo was shocked. He suspected that Yu Qianqiu had caused trouble again, but he didn't expect that he killed Ong Kwangsung's sect master. How was that possible? Ah, I killed Ong Kwangsung's sect master? Yu Qianqiu was stunned, and he said after a long time, Sect master, did I hear it wrong? Did you say that I killed Ong Kwangsung's sect master? Isn't that so? Feng Xiangtian scoffed. The matter has been investigated clearly, and you still want to quibble? Sect master, you must be mistaken. How could I kill Ong Kwangsung's sect master? Yu Qianqiu argued. Chapter 213. Feng Xiangtian said in a deep voice. Looks like you're going to resist till the end and refuse to admit it. Yu Qianqiu stood there with a wronged look and didn't say a word. It was as if he didn't do it. How could he admit it? You were originally a disciple of Ong Kwangsung. Why did you join Fuxian Island? Speak. What are your intentions? Feng Xiangtian shouted. Although he said that, he couldn't bear it in his heart. Such a rare and good seedling was going to be destroyed here. Damn it. I'm exposed. Yu Qianqiu didn't reply to him. Instead, he turned around and bowed deeply to Guan Weiwu. With a distressed expression, he said, This disciple was originally a commoner in the mortal world. My family was quite wealthy, and I originally wanted to live a carefree life. Fortunately, my ancestors saved Ong Kwangsung's sect master, Lu Chongqing. In order to repay the kindness, Lu Chongqing brought me to Ong Kwangsung to cultivate even though I didn't have a spiritual root to cultivate. Then I became master and disciple with sect master, Hao Sansi. Under the encouragement of my master, this disciple concentrated on training day and night, not daring to slack off for even a day. Perhaps it was heaven rewarding the diligent. I was a disciple of the Azure Light sect who had no spiritual roots and was humiliated by my fellow disciples. One day, I was enlightened and stepped into the refining chi stage. This should have been a happy event, but who would have thought that my master would warn me not to reveal a bit of my cultivation in front of others? At that time, this disciple didn't understand. Later, because my master was attacked and died. I was so angry that I exchanged a palm strike with the head's grandson Lu Zhengguang and revealed my cultivation. Afterwards, I understood why my master repeatedly warned me not to reveal my cultivation. Yu Qianqiu looked at everyone and bowed to Guanweiwu again. Sect Master, Lu Chongqing kept sending elders to ask me to reveal my cultivation secrets. But how could I have any cultivation secrets? I only know how to make up for my lack of cultivation with diligence. Because of this, I was demoted to a spirit stone mine to do hard labor. It was only a day after my master passed away. They couldn't wait any longer. So be it if you have to do hard labor. But the sect leader didn't want to let me go. He sent Elder Lu Wanqian to threaten and bribe me. I almost died in his hands several times, but I didn't know any cultivation secrets. How could I tell him? Then one day the magic illusion palace attacked the spirit stone mine. The dignified elder of the Ongquangsung, Lu Wanwan, used me as a shield in order to escape. Fortunately, this disciple was lucky enough to survive. Looking at the whole spirit stone mine, I was disheartened and didn't think about cultivation anymore. So I left quietly, thinking that it was just a nightmare and that I never came to Ongquangsung. Everyone from the supporting Immortals Island sighed. It turned out that Yu Qianqiu had such a miserable experience. Imagine a disciple without spiritual roots suddenly being able to cultivate. Some sects would indeed use all kinds of means. Who would have thought that Yu Qianqiu was an exception with extraordinary talent? However, a dignified righteous sect actually did such a thing to their own disciple. Anyone would be disappointed and leave Ongquangsung just like that. Everyone glanced at the green-robed elder and couldn't help but reveal a trace of disdain. When Qing Nu, who was beside Feng Xiangtian, heard Yu Qianqiu's words, a few of his white beards were already broken. He cupped his hands at everyone and sighed. I won't hide my shame. I also heard about this matter after the incident. It was indeed those evil disciples who were devoid of conscience and did the wrong thing first. Sigh. Let's not talk about the sect's misfortune. How shameful. These words undoubtedly proved that Yu Qianqiu's words were true, and everyone felt even more sympathy for Yu Qianqiu from the bottom of their hearts. Especially the cultivation pavilion's principal elder, Osihai. He thought to himself, Ongquangsung didn't want such an outstanding disciple. Now that he has entered my supporting Immortals Island, he is my supporting Immortals Island's disciple. How dare you, a mere Ongquangsung, come to my supporting Immortals Island to ask for him? This is outrageous. He had been thinking about how to get Yu Qianqiu into his cultivation pavilion. Brother Qing, don't blame yourself. Feng Xiangtian calmly comforted him. He faced Yu Qianqiu and said in a deep voice, where did you get the supporting Immortals token from back then? Yu Qianqiu still didn't answer him directly. Instead, he bowed to Guanweiwu, causing everyone to frown. He was clearly not putting the sect master in his eyes. Feng Xiangtian was expressionless. The former bowed and said, after leaving Ongquangsung, I wandered around. Once, I met an injured qi refinement stage cultivator who was on the verge of death. Unfortunately, I couldn't save him no matter how hard I tried. Before he died, he said that he was originally a disciple expelled by supporting Immortals Island. His name was Ji Wushuang. He gave me a token to repay my kindness, and said that I could join supporting Immortals Island with this token. I originally gave up on the idea of cultivating, but when I heard that it was the world's largest sect, I couldn't help but want to give it a try. In the end, I became a disciple of supporting Immortals Island. Ji Wushuang? Feng Xiangtian frowned. He looked around and asked, is there a disciple called Ji Wushuang among the expelled disciples? Osihai suddenly sighed and said, Sect Master, Yu Qianqiu is right. There was a disciple who was expelled from the sect called Ji Wushuang. He was a disciple of the cultivation pavilion. Seeing his disciple like this, a look of pain flashed across Guanweiwu's face. It wasn't that he didn't want to speak for his disciple. In fact, after he knew about this matter, he immediately went to find his senior brother, hoping that his senior brother would show mercy. But the latter immediately scolded him, saying that this matter involved other sects, and whether it was fair or not was related to the reputation of Fuxian Island. He sternly warned him that as Yu Qianqiu's master, he shouldn't intervene in this matter. He knew how to deal with it. Ferdinand was also warned. Yu Qianqiu suddenly opened his eyes. His face was full of coldness. Suddenly, he knelt down in front of Guan Weiwu and kowtowed 3 times in a row. After standing up, he brushed the hem of his gown with one hand and pulled it with both hands. With a hiss sound, the front hem of the gown was torn off on the spot. He pinched it with one hand and slowly raised it towards everyone. Everyone was stunned. They didn't know what he meant. He raised the torn hem of the gown and shouted in a deep voice, "Master, once this gown is torn, you and I are no longer friends. We don't owe each other anything. From now on I Yu Qianqiu have nothing to do with Fuxian Island. From now on I Yu Qianqiu am free to fly in the sky and fish in the sea. No one can control me Yu Qianqiu." They couldn't afford to offend them, but they had to deal with it. However, from what happened just now, if supporting Immortal Island wasn't deliberately putting on a show, then this matter really had nothing to do with supporting Immortal Island. Qingnu thought about it again and again. She stared at Yu Qianqiu and said in a deep voice, "Yu Qianqiu, is my Kuangsung Sect's treasure, the Green Destiny Sword, in your hands? If it's in your hands, you should return it to me." Return what? It was destroyed along with that broken horsetail whisk, Yu Qianqiu sneered and said. Even if the 2 treasures weren't destroyed, do you think I would return them to you? The dignified sect leader Kuangsung actually tried to kill my family members in the secular world. Moreover, they were the descendants of his savior. Only you people would do such a thing. Now you still have the cheek to ask me for the Green Destiny Sword? Is there something wrong with your brain? Everyone was speechless. This Yu Qianqiu didn't even care about old ancestor Qingnu, who was famous in the cultivation world. He was really arrogant. It seemed like it wasn't strange that he could continuously beat people up. What? The Green Destiny Sword was destroyed? Qingnu's expression was a little twitching. She had seen the horsetail whisk that was destroyed, so she was afraid that he was telling the truth. Suppressing the anger in her heart, Qingnu said in a deep voice, "I Kuangsung let you down first. Logically, I shouldn't pursue this matter. However, you killed my Kuangsung sect leader. Whether you are willing or not, I will imprison you in Kuangsung for 100 years. Also, who are those black-clothed people? You want to imprison me for 100 years? Dream on," Yu Qianqiu said in disdain. Qingnu hadn't been humiliated like this for many years. She immediately had the intention to fight. Yu Qianqiu waved his hand at her and smiled. Wait. If he had anything to ask or to fight, he would have to leave the supporting Immortal Island first. We aren't people of supporting Immortal Island. Fighting in their territory is not giving them face. All right. As you wish. Qingnu was really angry. This kid was too arrogant. If she didn't teach him a lesson, she would be letting herself down. She immediately cupped her fists at Feng Xiangtian and said, "Sect leader Feng, please open the island's protective array and let us out." Feng Xiangtian nodded and flicked a white light out of the window. That white light flew into the sky. "Old man, come out and reason with me," Yu Qianqiu shouted at Qingnu. He jumped out of the window and did a somersault in the air. The sword on his back was unsheathed and drew a semicircle, carrying him into the sky. "Sect leader Feng, sorry to disturb you." Qingnu cupped her fists and flew out of the window. However, with her cultivation at the end of the tribulation stage, she naturally didn't need to play such low-level tricks like sword kinesis. She turned into a shadow and chased after Yu Qianqiu, who had become a black dot in the sky. "Let's go and take a look." After getting Feng Xiangtian's approval, several figures flew out of the window. Swoosh. Hearing the whistling sound coming from below, Yu Qianqiu looked down and was speechless. This tribulation stage expert is really an expert. Flying in the air is faster than me flying on my sword. When he looked back and saw a white cloud above him, he immediately raised his cultivation to the limit and flew into it. "Want to run?" Qingnu, who was flying over, sneered in his heart when he saw the situation above him. His silhouette could still be seen, but as he smiled, he suddenly vanished into thin air. He had used teleportation, and when he reappeared, he was already at the edge of the white cloud high up in the sky. Yu Qianqiu had just managed to jump in before him. When Qing Nu saw him hiding inside, she did not chase after him. Instead, she flew directly to the top of the cloud. Looking around, this cloud was only 100 meters in radius. Immediately, she released a divine sense to scan the entire cloud. After a while, Qing Nu's face changed. Her divine sense went back and forth several times, but she didn't find the person inside. How could this be? With his cultivation, as long as his body moved slightly, it was impossible that her divine sense couldn't find him. At this time, Oci and Dongfeng Chang Ao also quickly came to his side and floated together in the air. Seeing his bad expression, Oci said, "Senior Qing, what's wrong?" "That guy is gone," Qing Nu said with a strange expression. The people who came later looked at each other. How could this be? With Qing Nu's cultivation at the end of the tribulation stage, how could Yu Qianqiu escape? Oci was stunned and said, "Impossible. With Yu Qianqiu's cultivation, how could he escape from Senior's hands? Even I don't think I can do it. No, I clearly saw him come in, and he should still be inside. How could I not find him? This guy is a little strange." After Qing Nu finished speaking, her divine sense swept back and forth again. Oci and the others also released their divine sense to check, but they still found nothing. "I don't believe that this guy can escape under my eyes. You guys back off." After Qing Nu let them back a little, a long sword suddenly appeared in her hand. She raised it towards the sky and shouted, "Green Sky Sword Art." The long sword in her hand emitted a green sword shadow that was nearly 100 meters long. It pierced the sky and suddenly radiated an imposing aura that spread out, causing the clothes of the people not far away to flutter. They exchanged glances. The old guy lost his face, got angry and wanted to kill. The huge sword in Qing Nu's hand suddenly moved. It looked huge, but it was very dexterous in her hand. The huge sword directly stirred the clouds. As her hand moved faster and faster, the whole white cloud was stirred up like a tornado, and gradually dissipated in the air. Until all the white clouds disappeared without a trace, Qing Nu put away the sword in her hand, and threw it back into the storage bag. But in front of her, there was no one. Chapter 215. They looked around, but it was obvious that Yu Qianqiu had run away. A core formation realm disciple had escaped from a cultivator in the final stage of the tribulation passing stage. He had disappeared without a trace, and it was inexplicable. Qing Nu, who was floating in the air, had an ugly expression. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that this was her humiliation. Did Yu Qianqiu leave supporting Immortal Island just like that? Oci groaned in pain from the bottom of his heart. He was really optimistic about Yu Qianqiu's potential. Especially everything that had happened now. It made him sigh endlessly. At such a young age, Yu Qianqiu already had such means. However, everything was impossible now. Yu Qianqiu had really left. They flew to Qing Nu's side, and Oci asked superfluously, "Senior, did Yu Qianqiu run away?" Qing Nu looked around with a gloomy expression. There were only a few clouds in the blue sky, and below them was a vast sea. With Yu Qianqiu's cultivation, where could he run to? Could it be? He stared at supporting Immortal Island, which was shrouded in mist. Oci understood what he meant, and he said in astonishment, "Senior, do you suspect that he went back to supporting Immortal Island? That's impossible. When we just came out, the island's protective formation sealed supporting Immortal Island again. He can't go back. Why don't Senior go back to supporting Immortal Island to look for him?" Qing Nu did have that thought. But even if Yu Qianqiu went back to hide, what right did he have to search supporting Immortal Island? He pondered for a moment, shook his head and said, "There's no need. There's still a long way to go. I don't believe that this brat will never show himself in the cultivation world. Please bid farewell to sect leader Feng on my behalf. I won't go down anymore." With that said, he flew away without looking back, disappearing into the distance in the blink of an eye. The few of them sent him off with their gazes before exchanging glances. All of them shook their heads and smiled bitterly. They then sized up the surroundings under the clear sky and bright sun. Such a bright and clear world was disturbed by Yu Qianqiu like this, and it seemed rather strange. Let's go back. Osihai sighed as the few of them dived towards Fuxian Island. After returning to Penglai Pavilion, Osihai told Feng Xiangtian and others in detail what happened just now. Everyone was stunned and surprised. Qing Nu, who had the cultivation of the final phase of nature's test, didn't catch Yu Qianqiu and let him run away? Guan Weiwu and Ferdinand looked at each other and secretly breathed a sigh of relief. In the main hall of the Wanfen Garden, Ma Jiugu, who was holding a walking stick, was standing in the middle of the hall with Lan Bingxiu as support. She was looking at Hibiscus, who was sitting motionlessly on a chair. Tears were silently rolling down Hibiscus's beautiful face. Obviously, she was restrained. Lan Bingxiu looked at the face that was even more beautiful than hers, and her expression was indescribable. After the banquet was over, Ferdinand angrily returned and greeted Ma Jiugu. Jiugu. There was quite a commotion above supporting Immortal Island just now. What? Could it be that Qing Nu, that old fellow, had made a move on Yu Qianqiu? What happened? Ma Jiugu turned around and asked. Hibiscus, who couldn't move, looked at her father anxiously. Yu Qianqiu. Hey, that brat was a bit impulsive. At first, the sect leader didn't plan to do anything to him. He just wanted to put on a show in front of Qing Nu, who knew that when he saw that his master didn't say anything to help him, he actually cut ties with Guan Weiwu in front of everyone. Their master-disciple relationship ended there. The sect leader was also angry and expelled him from the supporting Immortal Island in public. It's funny that Qing Nu chased Yu Qianqiu to the outside of the supporting Immortal Island. In the end, with Qing Nu's cultivation of the final phase of nature's test, she couldn't catch Yu Qianqiu and let him escape. Heh. I really don't know how that brat has such ability. It's really incredible. Ferdinand shook his head and smiled bitterly. That old fellow Qing Nu didn't catch Yu Qianqiu? Ma Jiugu was stunned. Lan Bingxiu was also shocked. Hearing this, Hibiscus, who had tears in her eyes, immediately relaxed. Her large eyes flickered. Others might not know, but she knew that Yu Qianqiu had the ability to appear and disappear unpredictably. It was normal that others couldn't catch him. He escaped, but from now on he is no longer a disciple of supporting Immortal Island. Without the protection of supporting Immortal Island, the Luo sect and Ong Kwangsung will definitely not let him go. Jiugu. Why didn't you come forward to persuade the sect leader? I believe that if you had come forward, this matter wouldn't have escalated to this point, Ferdinand asked. I'm old and a little muddle-headed. I never interfere with the decisions of the supporting Immortal Island. Ma Jiugu turned around and stared at Hibiscus and asked, I heard that your girl's face was cured by Yu Qianqiu. Yes. Ferdinand nodded and said, This disciple will not hide it from you. Yu Qianqiu went to the demon domain and got a lot of spirit grasses. He secretly hid them and didn't hand them over. Instead, he secretly refined a furnace of Rui Dan for Rong. Just like that, Ronger's face was cured. Rui pill. Even Ma Jiugu couldn't help but exclaim. Is it the legendary Rui pill that can keep youthful, detoxify, nourish one's face, and make one immune to hundreds of poisons? According to Yu Qianqiu, it should be. You didn't see the appearance of the Rui pill at that time. Not only did it give off a pill halo, but it also emitted 7 colored rays of light. It was the first time in my life that I saw such a pill. It was an eye-opener. Ferdinand sighed. Hearing this, Lan Bingxiu looked at Hibiscus with an envious expression. Which woman didn't want to stay youthful? Your girl is so lucky. Sigh. If I had encountered such a pill in the past, I wouldn't have gotten the name Ma Jiugu. Lan, let's go. Let's not look at it, lest we get envious. Let's go. Let's go. Ma Jiugu shook her head and sighed. She slowly walked out with Lan Bingxiu's help. When Yu Qianqiu was being chased by Qing Nu and was about to enter the cloud, he was scared out of his wits when he looked back. The other party actually teleported in front of him. As soon as he entered the cloud, he immediately flashed back to Utopia without saying anything. He didn't dare to be long-winded. A cultivator at the final stage of the crossing calamity stage was simply too terrifying for him. The reason why he disappeared into the cloud was that he didn't want to expose the secret that he could disappear into thin air. Who knew that he would almost be killed? After appearing in Bai Suzhen's room in the Misty Palace, he finally felt safe. He breathed a sigh of relief and wiped the cold sweat on his forehead. Bai Suzhen suddenly looked back. Seeing him like this, she walked up to him and asked with concern, "What's wrong?" "Damn it. I'm so unlucky today. I was just expelled from the supporting Immortals Island, and now I'm being chased by a cultivator at the final stage of the crossing calamity stage by Ong Kwangsung. Just a little bit more. If he had killed me before I could react, I might not have been able to come back. I was so scared," Yu Qianqiu said in a relaxed manner after the fright. "You were expelled from the supporting Immortals Island? Why would a cultivator from Ong Kwangsung want to kill you? Is it because you helped me investigate the 4 treasures?" Bai Suzhen grabbed his arm, especially when she saw the long hem of his robe. He was naked behind his buttocks and his legs were exposed in front. Who knew what kind of danger he had encountered? Yu Qianqiu gently pressed her hand and said with a smile, "Sister, don't think too much. It's not your fault. It's my fault." Bai Suzhen, on the other hand, didn't think so. She only thought that he was comforting her. She bit her lips and said, "I can take my time with my matters. You must pay attention to your safety outside." In her heart, there was nothing more important than Yu Qianqiu's safety. Yu Qianqiu shook his head and smiled bitterly. "I'm afraid it's too late now. I believe it won't take long for the whole cultivation world to know that I was expelled from the supporting Immortals Island. At that time, I'm afraid that the Daoyuo sect and Ong Kwangsung will cast their net to find me. It's not convenient for me to show myself in public for a while." "Then you shouldn't go out during this period of time." Bai Suzhen's peerless features gently lifted as she looked at him worriedly. Yu Qianqiu was a little dazed. He had the urge to hug and kiss her. Just when he was thinking about it, his divine sense suddenly fluctuated. Someone was looking for him. Yu Qianqiu was surprised and said, "It's news from the Pillar of General's office. Could it be that there's an improvement in the mission that I gave to little Tian? Sister, I have something to do. I'll go out for a while." As soon as he finished speaking, he took off his long robe and put it on. Then he disappeared without a trace. Bai Suzhen bent down to pick up the torn clothes on the ground and held them in her hands. Her pretty face was filled with worry. Chapter 216. The rear garden of the National Pillar's mansion had become a forbidden area. Actually, there was nothing they could do about it. At this time, there were many people in the rear garden. There were adults and children, and all of them were dressed shabbily. None of them were presentable, and they all looked at the surrounding courtyard with fear. No one dared to make a sound, and there were probably more than 100 people. These people were brought here by Ling Feng, and the others while they were cultivating in the capital. Nowadays, the 3 of them could be said to be living a comfortable life. They cultivated in peace, and with the nourishment of spirit stones and spirit pills, their cultivation was rising rapidly. In the past, it was something they didn't even dare to think about. They didn't have to worry about food and drink, and there was no one to restrict them. They also had the money Shi Xiaotian gave them to spend. Although they couldn't normally appear in the general's mansion, they would climb over the wall and stroll around the capital when they were free. The 3 of them did not dare to neglect the task that Yu Qianqiu had entrusted them with. The purpose of their stroll was to find people with spirit roots for cultivation. Shi Xiaotian looked at the group of people in the rear garden and didn't know whether to laugh or cry. What kind of people did Ling Feng and the others bring here? Most of them looked like beggars, or they looked like they were in dire straits. Some of them had eaten their fill and were squatting in the shade of a tree, scratching lice. On the wall of the small courtyard, Ling Feng and the others sat side by side, while Shi Xiaotian stood on it. The 4 of them looked at the group of people in the garden. Shi Xiaotian smiled bitterly and said, "Ling Feng, did you bring all the beggars in the capital here?" Beizi looked up at him and smiled. "If the 3 of us really brought all the beggars in the capital here, even 10 of your general's mansions wouldn't be able to accommodate them, let alone this garden." We also want to bring some decent people for boss, but boss already told us to keep a low profile. If we brought so many ordinary people here, I'm afraid that the government would have long been alerted and people would have noticed. Look at these beggars and vagrants, they don't have families, and they're all alone. Without them, no one in the capital would know. Shi Xiaotian waved his finger and said, "But look, why did you bring even old men here? What does boss want them for?" "That's good. At least they won't starve to death on the streets." It was rare for Xianping to say such a long sentence. Ling Feng nodded and said, "Boss said that as long as they don't belong to any sect and have spiritual roots, regardless of age, the more the better." Let's wait for the boss to get here first." Shi Xiaotian shook his head and raised a small silver ball in his hand. He asked doubtfully, "I just used my divine sense to check inside and found that it's empty. Can this really summon boss?" "It should be possible. Otherwise, boss wouldn't have given this to us for no reason," Ling Feng said. Shi Xiaotian looked at the silver ball in his hand and smiled bitterly. "I hope boss can take them away as soon as possible. Otherwise there will be hundreds of people eating every day." "What? Your Grand General's residence can't even support 100 people?" Yu Qianqiu suddenly appeared on top of the wall and laughed. "Boss!" The few of them turned around and exclaimed in surprise. After Shi Xiaotian's joy, he smiled awkwardly and said, "Boss, that's not what I meant. It's just that my father is about to return to the imperial court. I'm afraid it will arouse my father's suspicion. I don't know how to explain it to him." Yu Qianqiu looked at the hundreds of people and nodded slightly. They were all people with spiritual roots. He didn't expect Ling Feng and the other two to be able to gather so many people in such a short period of time. However, he was stunned when he saw a few old people among them. "Let's talk inside." Yu Qianqiu directly entered the courtyard from the top of the wall. After the four of them entered the main hall, Yu Qianqiu sat on a chair in the main hall and asked curiously, "The pillar of the state general has been fighting at the borders for many years. Why is he suddenly returning to the imperial court?" Shi Xiaotian smiled and said, "It's nothing. The Pingwa general has two beautiful daughters. The eldest is going to marry the current crown prince, and the second is going to marry the eldest son of the Weigua general. My father, the Pingwa general, and the Weigua general are the three great generals of the empire. Maybe it's because of this that my father has to come personally to congratulate them. An important official with an important official, and an important official with the crown prince?" Yu Qianqiu's brows twitched. He seemed to feel that something wasn't right. He frowned and said, "Xiaotian, among the three great generals of the empire, who has the greatest military power?" "It's not a matter of who has the greatest military power. The three great generals control 6 million soldiers and horses, and there isn't much of a difference in power. If we're talking about military power, I'm afraid it's still my father," Shi Xiaotian said with a hint of pride. "Why?" Yu Qianqiu asked. Shi Xiaotian raised his hand and gestured. "The south of the Wuxia Empire is a barren land that is rarely visited by humans. In the words of our cultivation world, it's called the demonic domain. The east side, Linhai, has always been guarded by the troops of the Weigua general. The Pingwa general's troops are mainly guarding the capital region, as well as the northern border. My father, the pillar of the state general, is guarding the west. The east side Linhai has no neighbors. The south is barren, and although it's dangerous, there are no wars. Although there's a big country in the north, they're located in a bitter cold land. In terms of strength, they can't compare to our empire. Only the west that my father guards is not only vast, but it's also connected to the 6 countries. Ever since our empire was founded, the 6 countries have never stopped having conflicts, big or small. Think about it, boss. For so many years, the troops in the east, south, and north have been preparing for war all year round. On the other hand, the west that my father guards is always preparing for war. Therefore, among the 3 great generals of the empire, my father's troops are the strongest." "Oh, so that's how it is." Yu Qianqiu had always been in the cultivation world, so he really didn't know much about these things. After a moment of silence, he asked again, "Then what about the defense of the west when your father returns to the capital? Isn't he worried at all?" "Huh? Boss, you don't know. Shi Xiaotian laughed. Last year, the 6 countries attacked our empire together, instantly angering my father. My father immediately issued a death order. With a single command, his 2 million troops split into 6 groups and defeated the 6 countries one by one, causing them to suffer great losses. In the end, the 6 countries sued for peace. At the beginning of this year, they signed an inviolable treaty with our Wuxia Empire. That's why my father can return to the capital with peace of mind. As for the defense of the West, my father has already handed it over to my second brother. Second brother has grown up under my father's guidance. I believe that it won't be a problem for him to guard the West. Oh, that means that there's no war in the West for now? Yu Qianqiu asked. Shi Xiaotian laughed. The 6 countries have suffered great losses. Even if they want to cause trouble, it'll be impossible for them to do so in the next decade or so. Seeing the proud look on Shi Xiaotian's face, Yu Qianqiu didn't ask him anything else. However, in his heart he was grumbling. There was no war at the border, but the Shi family controlled the strongest troops of the Wuxia Empire. A single army was able to defeat the armies of the 6 countries at the same time. One could imagine the battle prowess of this army. Some people probably couldn't sit still anymore. Look, they even brought up the matter of an alliance marriage. Chapter 217. Ling Feng walked over and said, Boss Ai Beizi and Xianping found the people in the garden. Although they don't have much aptitude, they still have some spiritual roots. I wonder if they can be used? Yu Qianqiu came back to his senses and smiled. It's fine as long as they have spiritual roots. How can there be so many people with good aptitude? Those with good aptitude have already been taken away by the major sections. You guys won't even have the chance to find them. But why did you bring the old man here? Shi Xiaotian glanced at the 3 of them and laughed in his heart. Ling Feng was startled and said, Boss, didn't you say it's better to have more people regardless of age? Did I say that? Yu Qianqiu was stunned and immediately came to a realization. Oh, I think I did say that before. Forget it, it's better than nothing. We can bring them back to cultivate, and they'll be stronger than ordinary people. With so many people, we'll be worried about our food supply. It's better to bring them back and not do anything else. We can be self-sufficient. By the way, little Tian, when you have time, help me gather some grains and seeds of all kinds of fruits and vegetables. I have great use for them. The 3 of them didn't know what he was going to do. Shi Xiaotian nodded and agreed. Yu Qianqiu instructed again. Ling Feng, Beizi and Xianping continued to search for people with spiritual roots. I'll still say it. I'll take as many as you can regardless of age. It doesn't matter if your aptitude is lacking, I have a way to solve it. But remember, keep a low profile and don't let the other sex find out. I've been chased out of supporting Immortal's island. Many people want to kill me. This general's residence is my stronghold now. Don't let it be exposed. The 3 of them looked at each other and Shi Xiaotian asked in surprise, Why were you chased out of supporting Immortal's island? My ass. Yu Qianqiu stood up and patted Shi Xiaotian's shoulder. He smiled and said, Xiaotian, I've taken revenge for you in Ongquangsung. The head of Ongquangsung, Lu Chongqing, and his grandson Lu Jingguang were both killed by me. They were shocked again. Shi Xiaotian swallowed his saliva and said, Boss, you're not lying to me, right? You killed Sect Master Ongquangsung? How is this possible? Damn it. Do I look like a liar to you? Yu Qianqiu sighed and said, If I didn't kill him, would I have been expelled from the supporting Immortal Island? Sigh. The days of having someone to back him up were over. From now on, he would have to rely on himself. Everyone, keep a low profile. They were completely speechless, but they still didn't quite believe it. How could the Righteous Path's 6th-ranked sect leader Ongquangsung be killed so easily? It's good to be expelled from the sect. In the future, I can come here whenever I want. Oh right, Xiaotian, get me a set of ordinary clothes. I can't wear the supporting Immortal Island's clothes anymore. I'll definitely get into trouble if I stroll around the capital, Yu Qianqiu said. Shi Xiaotian's eyes lit up. From Yu Qianqiu's words, he could tell that Yu Qianqiu was going to be here often. He immediately agreed happily and went out to find clothes for Yu Qianqiu. Ling Feng and the other two were also overjoyed. As for Yu Qianqiu, he flashed into the garden and stored the 100 or so people in the garden into utopia. After giving some instructions to Guan Yu, Shi Xiaotian ran over excitedly with a set of clothes. He said, "Boss, try this set of clothes to see if it suits you. This is my second brother's clothes. His figure seems to be about the same as yours." Yu Qianqiu took a look and saw that the embroidered clothes, jade belt, and thick-soled boots were all prepared. He threw them back and snappily said, "I just told you to keep a low profile. Why did you give me these clothes? Are you afraid that others won't notice me?" He waved his hand and said, "Just give me the clothes of your general residence's servants." "Servants' clothes are for you to wear?" Shi Xiaotian was stunned. Ling Feng and the other two felt a little uncomfortable looking at the silk robes they were wearing. Yu Qianqiu frowned and said, "Why are you so long-winded? If I say it's fine, it's fine." Left with no choice, Shi Xiaotian could only run back to get him a set of servants' clothes. When Yu Qianqiu put on a slanted hat and adjusted his brand-new black clothes, he instantly revealed a satisfied smile and said, "Not bad, not bad. These clothes are really low profile. Xiaotian, from today onwards, I'll be your follower." I don't dare. Shi Xiaotian hurriedly waved his hand. He thought, "If you become my follower, what if one day you're not happy? Where am I going to find spirit stones and spirit pills?" Yu Qianqiu waved his hand and said, "Don't be long-winded. In front of others, I'll be your follower. Behind others, I'll still be your boss. That's settled." Ling Feng and the other two exchanged glances and said, "Xiaotian, find us a set of servants' clothes too." "Why? Is it fun to be a servant's follower?" Yu Qianqiu glared at them and said, "Do you want to go to the capital's 10,000 flower house to be a pimp?" The three looked at each other and didn't dare to say anything. After staying in the capital for so long, the three naturally knew what kind of place 10,000 flower house was. "Xiaotian, speaking of 10,000 flower house, I've never been there before. Why don't you take me there now?" Yu Qianqiu tidied up the crooked hat on his head and sighed. At this time, he had already put away the storage bag and the sword on his back. To him, it didn't matter if these things were on display or not. If he wanted to take them out, it would only take a thought. The three looked at each other and didn't know if he was telling the truth or not. Looking at his serious expression, it didn't seem like he was joking. Shi Xiaotian asked tentatively, "Boss, you really want to go to 10,000 flower house?" "Heh, that place is a lively place." "Oh, lively?" Yu Qianqiu nodded his head seriously and said, "I was just saying it casually. Since you want to go, as your follower, I naturally have to accompany you. AI, if you want to go, then hurry up. Let's go. Let's go. Don't waste time." The three were completely speechless. Yu Qianqiu pushed Shi Xiaotian out in a hurry. As he walked, he didn't forget to look back and warn the three who followed him. "What are you three doing here? Go do what you need to do." Pillar of State General's residence. Yu Qianqiu had lived here for more than a year, so he was very familiar with the place. In the wealthy and powerful mansion, the two of them walked out of the back garden one after another. The servants who passed by saluted when they saw Shi Xiaotian, but when they saw the servant in new clothes behind him, they all felt that he was very unfamiliar. They all secretly muttered, "Why haven't I seen the third young master's servant before?" Shi Xiaotian walked confidently in front, while Yu Qianqiu followed behind with his hands behind his back. His aura wasn't any weaker than the former's, but it seemed that his awareness as a servant was a little lacking. When the two of them were about to pass the main hall, a beautiful woman walked out. The two women on her left and right were also quite good-looking. Behind them was a group of servant girls. Shi Xiaotian slowed down and said in a low voice, "You know my mother. The two beside her are my eldest sister-in-law and second sister-in-law. They married a few years ago, so you haven't seen them before." The two of them inevitably bumped into each other. Shi Xiaotian bowed and said, "Mother, eldest sister-in-law, second sister-in-law." The servants on the other side also bowed to Shi Xiaotian. Li Hongyang looked at her son lovingly. Her eyes inadvertently glanced at the servant behind her son. and was slightly startled. Not only did this servant not bow to her, he actually stood there with his hands behind his back. Yu Qianqiu looked at her and nodded with a smile. When Li Hongyang saw who it was, she was immediately shocked. When the woman beside her saw Yu Qianqiu, she frowned and said, "Uncle, is this the new retainer? Why isn't he bowing to mother?" She immediately turned around and shouted, "Housekeeper, who brought this servant? Why doesn't he know the most basic manners of servants? Someone come. Bring him to teach him the rules." Chapter 218. Hearing this, Yu Qianqiu was dumbfounded. Not only him, Li Hongyang and Shi Xiaotian were also dumbfounded. Not far away, a man in his 50s jogged over and repeatedly smiled apologetically at the woman. He shouted at Yu Qianqiu in a low voice, "Still not coming with me, Mr. Yu." The housekeeper was Shi Shunqing, a retainer of the general's office. He had met Yu Qianqiu many times in the past, so he was familiar with him. He more or less knew what kind of person Yu Qianqiu was. When he saw Yu Qianqiu's face clearly, he was dumbfounded. Close to 10 years had passed, and his own appearance had already aged. However, Yu Qianqiu still looked the same, just that his appearance had become more mature. He naturally recognized him with a single glance, and was immediately at a loss as to what to do. "Shunqing, this has nothing to do with you. Take all the servants away. I haven't seen my wife for many years, so we have something to talk about." Yu Qianqiu came back to his senses and smiled. He ordered the housekeeper to leave. Shi Shunqing nodded repeatedly. After getting Li Hongyang's permission, he took the group of servants away. Seeing that the housekeeper didn't listen to her, the woman was a little annoyed. She glared at him and said, "Does the general's office have any rules? Wanshi, don't be rude." Li Hongyang stopped her. The other woman next to her quietly watched everything that happened just now. The servant in front of her was obviously not simple. How could a normal person order the housekeeper of the general's office? "Mother, these servants are getting more and more unruly. If you don't teach them a lesson, they will bully their master in the future. Mother is kind, so you can't be cruel. Why don't you let your wife discipline them instead?" The woman seemed to have lost a nerve in her head, and was still chattering. The other woman had already pulled her a few times, but she still didn't notice. "Shut up." Li Hongyang also scolded her wife. In her impression, Yu Qianqiu was like a god. Back then, he just casually drew a path and trapped her eldest son for a few days. How could she offend him? "Damn it. If you continue to nag, I'll sell you to Africa." Yu Qianqiu was speechless when he met such a woman. He pointed at the woman's pretty face and asked Shi Xiaotian, "Xiaotian, is this your sister-in-law? Is it Shi Youtian's wife or Shi Yintian's?" Shi Xiaotian looked at him with a wry smile and thought to himself, "If you don't wear this servant's clothes, how could you have caused such trouble?" Li Hongyang took over the conversation and introduced awkwardly, "Mister, please don't be offended. This is Bao Wanshi, the wife of my eldest son Yu Tian, and this is Situ Hui, the wife of my second son In Tian." "Bao Wanshi?" Yu Qianqiu sized her up and laughed coldly. "She doesn't live up to her name. Why did Yu Tian choose such a shrew? In my opinion, he should just divorce her." His words were not polite at all. The people at the side were speechless. Shi Xiaotian really didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Bao Wanshi was so angry that her face turned pale. She said with a trembling voice, "You, wah." She was so angry that she cried. Yu Qianqiu didn't have a good impression of shrewd-like women. What he said just now was to anger her. Seeing that she was crying, he immediately became interested in watching a good show. He jokingly said, "Cry, continue to cry. It's too soft, louder." Bao Wanshi did as he said and began to cry loudly. Her voice was really sharp, and she even made a lot of body movements. Situ Hui, who was at the side, tried to comfort her, but it was useless. Li Hongyang felt a headache coming on. Shi Xiaotian quickly pulled Yu Qianqiu back and said, "Boss, I'm begging you. Please be lenient with your words. She is my sister-in-law after all. Just give me some face, okay? Who made my wife cry?" A voice that pretended to be angry was heard with a hint of laughter. Yu Qianqiu turned to look. A person walked out from the entrance. He wore a scholar's hat and a vermilion official's robe. Who else could it be but the Shi family's boss, Shi Yutian? However, he seemed much more mature than before, especially with the 2 small tufts of beard on his mouth. Wah! Bao Wanshi acted as if she saw her savior. She wiped her tears and rushed into Shi Yutian's arms. She began to complain about all her grievances. There's such an evil servant. Wanshi, don't cry. I'll teach him a lesson for you. Shi Yutian let go of his wife and walked over with large strides. Haha. Interesting. Yu Qianqiu couldn't help but clap his hands and laugh. He said, Shi Yutian, we haven't seen each other for so many years. I didn't think you'd become a flower protector. I'd like to see how you'll teach me a lesson. How dare you? After Shi Yutian saw the person's face clearly, the words he was about to shout got stuck in his throat. His face turned red. When he came to his senses, he hurriedly lifted the hem of his official robe and ran over to pay his respects. Yutian greets Mr. I haven't seen Mr. for many years. You've been well. No matter what their relationship was like in the past, meeting old friends was always a happy thing. Yu Qianqiu supported him and said with a smile, I don't live as well as you do. Hugging your wife and flirting in public. TSK. What a simple life. Mister, you must be joking. Yutian only covets some romantic relationships. How can it compare to Mr.'s celestial life? After all these years, Mr. is still as elegant as ever. Yutian really envies you. He was speaking from the bottom of his heart. Back then, he painstakingly pursued the path of cultivation. In the end, the path was ethereal and he woke up from his dream. He finally gave up and settled down to marry a wife and focus on his career. However, he couldn't help but have a cultivation complex in his heart. He sighed to himself. His third wife was the one he was envious of. He often wanted to chat with his third wife, but it was difficult to see her leave the forbidden area of the back garden. At this moment, Bao Wanshi was no longer crying. She was looking at her husband with her mouth wide open. No matter how stupid she was, she could sense that the servant in front of her was not ordinary. Shi Yutian waved at her and said, Wanshi, come and greet Mr. Ah. Bao Wanshi didn't know where to put her hands. She walked over gracefully and saluted with a flushed face. Bao Wanshi greets Mr. I was reckless and offended Mr. just now. Please forgive me, Mr. Si Tuhui, who was at the side, was very obedient. She didn't need to be reminded and came over to bow. Si Tuhui greets Mr. Yu Qianqiu snorted coldly at Bao Wanshi and ignored her. Instead, he raised his hand at Si Tuhui, indicating that she didn't have to be so polite. He smiled and said, Are you Yin Tian's wife? I'm old acquaintances with your husband. Wife. Husband? This Mr.'s words were a little rude. Si Tuhui muttered to herself, but she nodded with a smile and retreated to the side. Shi Yutian saw that Yu Qianqiu was ignoring his wife's apology. He immediately gave his third brother a look, asking him to plead for leniency. Shi Xiaotian understood and walked over to pull Yu Qianqiu. He smiled and said, Boss, my sister-in-law actually has a good heart. She's just a little outspoken. Don't bother with her. That's right, that's right. Shi Yutian walked over and said, Yutian apologizes to Mr. on my wife's behalf. I hope that Mr. will forgive my wife this time for my third brother's sake. Actually, Yu Qianqiu wouldn't really bother with an ordinary person like her. However, women sometimes relied on their status and didn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. In order to be less long-winded in the future, he couldn't help but scare her a little. He immediately pointed his finger and shouted, Bao Wanshi, I'll spare your life this time for the sake of the Shi brothers. If you dare to do this again, I'll definitely take your head. When that time comes, it'll be useless no matter who pleads for mercy. Hurry up and thank Mr. Shi Yutian tugged at his wife. Bao Wanshi felt very wronged. How could she be treated worse than an outsider in her own home? However, she still thanked him honestly. This matter was settled just like that. Bless the heavens. Yu Qianqiu patted his shoulder and sighed. Xiaotian and I are going to Wanhua brothel. Do you want to join us? Shi Xiaotian almost vomited blood. He looked at his mother, who was glaring at him guiltily. Si Tuhui's face was already red. Bao Wancher's eyes were wide open. Shi Yutian kept smiling foolishly at Yu Qianqiu. This question was very difficult to answer. In fact, he really wanted to go out with Yu Qianqiu. It was not for the fans of Wanhua brothel, but purely for Yu Qianqiu. However, his wife, mother, and sister-in-law were all at the side. How was he supposed to answer? Yu Qianqiu joked. Are you going or not? Why are you smiling foolishly? Give me an answer. Shi Xiaoyan's expression twitched. Boss, you just want to see the world in chaos. You're not allowed to go. Bao Wancher opened her arms and stood in front of Shi Yutian. She glared at Yu Qianqiu and said, even if you kill me, I won't let him go to that place with you. Oh, I didn't know that she was a feminist. Yu Qianqiu chuckled and said, Yutian, since your wife doesn't want you to go, then forget it. Xiaotian, let's go. With that said, he walked straight out. Shi Xiaotian lowered his head and followed behind as if he was looking for ants. Hey, Mr. Wait. Shi Yutian was a little anxious. If you dare to go, I'll fight it out with you. Bao Wancher jumped onto Shi Yutian and hugged him tightly. She didn't care about her image anymore. Not far away, Yu Qianqiu's laughter could be heard. Si Tuhui's eyes revealed a trace of curiosity. Who was this person? Chapter 219. The speed at which news spread in the cultivation world was very fast. It was much faster than the speed at which a horse could run or a pigeon could carry a message. Once the news of Yu Qianqiu being expelled from the supporting Immortals Island was released, it caused a huge uproar. Of course, an ordinary core formation disciple would not be able to cause such a huge uproar. The main reason was that the things he did had a huge impact. 100 Flowers Valley beat up the grandson of Sect Master Ong Kwangsung, and Hat Island beat up the son of Deluo Sect's Sect Master. This guy seemed to be targeting those with status. Ong Kwangsung announced that Sect Master Ong Kwangsung and his grandson had been killed by Yu Qianqiu. Ong Kwangsung offered a reward of 1 million high-grade spirit stones to anyone who could provide information about Yu Qianqiu. The reward for taking Yu Qianqiu's head was 5 million high-grade spirit stones, and the reward for capturing Yu Qianqiu alive was 10 million high-grade spirit stones. As soon as the news of the Azure Light sect was released, the entire cultivation world was boiling. A mere core formation disciple killed Sect Master Ong Kwangsung? It was hard to believe. However, for those from the small sects, 1 million, 5 million, or even 10 million upper spiritual stones were tempting enough for them. Now that Yu Qianqiu didn't have the support of supporting Immortal Island, he was just a core formation cultivator. He was no different from a lowly vagrant cultivator. There was nothing to be afraid of. Therefore, they sent out their disciples to investigate. Even if they did not expect to earn 10 million high-grade spirit stones, it would still be good if they could earn 1 million. Those poor rogue cultivators tried their luck everywhere. However, there was a rumor that Ong Kwangsung's ancestor Qing Nu failed to capture Yu Qianqiu when he confronted Yu Qianqiu. Instead, he allowed Yu Qianqiu to escape unscathed. However, after thinking about it, everyone understood that this was pure nonsense. How could a late-stage transcending tribulation cultivator fail to capture a core formation cultivator? It was a joke and a rumor. Under Ong Kwangsung's request, the entire cultivation alliance began to operate. All the righteous sects that joined the cultivation alliance would search for Yu Qianqiu in the cultivation world. If necessary, they could kill him on the spot. The Luo sect was especially supportive of this. At this moment, in the Wu clan's ancestral hall of the 4 major clans, the clan heads of the 4 major clans gathered together at the fastest speed. After receiving the news from Wuxia, the 4 clan heads weren't surprised that Yu Qianqiu was expelled from Fuxian Island. After the 4 clan heads had a discussion, they issued a secret order to the disciples of the 4 major clans to search for Yu Qianqiu in secret. Once they found him, they were to protect him at all costs until he returned to the 4 major clans. Once this news was out, the evil Dao was the happiest. The righteous sects actually had such an unconventional traitor. Moreover, he was a traitor of Fuxian Island. Moreover, he was such a famous traitor. If he could join the evil Tao, it would be a huge blow to the reputation of the righteous sections. Why wouldn't they do it? As a result, the entire evil Tao alliance began to operate rapidly. All the evil Tao sects had a common understanding that they would protect Yu Qianqiu at all costs when necessary. If any of the sects suffered any losses because of this matter, all the sects would compensate them together. In short, they must not let the righteous sects succeed. 10,000 demons Qiu Wuyuan clamored in high spirits as he personally commanded this leap operation. In an instant, both the righteous and the evil Tao took action. Yu Qianqiu had completely disrupted the entire cultivation world. No one knew if the righteous sects would succeed, or if the evil Tao would be rampant. In the bustling streets of the Wuxia Empire, Yu Qianqiu was wearing black clothes and a small hat. He was dressed like a servant and was completely unaware of everything that happened in the cultivation world. Because of him, he was leisurely strolling behind Xiaotian. When he saw the people and carriages passing by and people looking at him with strange eyes, Yu Qianqiu immediately restrained himself. Not to mention anything else, the fact that he was misunderstood by Bao Wanshi at the general's mansion meant that he was not good enough at acting as a servant. Thus, he found a passerby as a comparison. He put down his hands behind his back and straightened his chest. He followed behind Xiaotian with a dejected look. "Boss." Xiaotian turned around and was stunned. Why did his boss look like a thief? He said in a daze. "Are we really going to Wanhualu? F***CK. Have you ever seen a young master call a servant boss? Please act more properly and call me Little Qian." Yu Qianqiu rolled his eyes. Little Qian, are we really going to Wanhualu? Xiaotian said a little unnaturally. "Young master, if you say so, we will go." Yu Qianqiu put on a servant's smile and thought, Wanhualu is so famous in the capital. I wonder what the difference is between the brothels of the ancient times and the ones in my previous life. I wasn't in the mood before, but now that I'm interested, I'll be letting myself down if I don't take a look. When did I say I wanted to go? It seems like you're the one who said you wanted to go. Xiaotian was speechless. He originally wanted to get a carriage, but he didn't know why Yu Qianqiu rejected it and insisted on walking. Wanhualu should be considered as the #1 brothel in the Wuxia Empire. There were branches in all the bigger cities in the empire. To be able to obtain the title of Wanhua and make so many men flock to it like ducks and spend money like water, it definitely had its own unique points. Yu Qianqiu came because of this point. This was the #1 brothel in the world. Compared to the #1 brothel in the world, Fuxian Island, it seemed like more people knew about the former than the latter. The night was about to turn dark. On a small street that wasn't the main street, the moment one entered the street, one could smell the fragrance of pink powder. This small street was abnormally bustling with people walking to and fro, rubbing shoulders with each other. It was a street where one could eat, drink, and be merry. This was all thanks to the #1 brothel in the world, Wanhualu. When the two walked in, Yu Qianqiu exclaimed in admiration that this was a first-rate place to spend money. Xiaotian's face also became lively. Suddenly, there was a crowd of people rushing towards the largest building in the middle of the street. That building was decorated with colorful makeup, and it was even more beautiful than a bride's. The fragrance of pink powder was coming from that building. Needless to say, this was definitely Wanhualu. The two of them were swept by the crowd. Xiaotian turned his head and looked at the crowded carriages on the street. He was secretly glad that he didn't take a carriage. Yu Qianqiu patted the shoulder of a person beside him and asked, "Brother, why is it so lively here? Is Wanhualu like this every day?" That person was trying his best to squeeze forward. Hearing this, he looked at Yu Qianqiu with surprise and said, "One look and I know it's your first time here. Today is the day that the #1 courtesan of Wanhualu will appear. Normally, you won't be able to see it. It only happens once a month. If you're lucky, you might be able to see it." After saying this, he ignored him and continued to squeeze forward. The #1 courtesan of the world's #1 courtesan? How beautiful would she be? Yu Qianqiu was instantly interested. He secretly circulated his true essence, trying to push through the crowd. At this moment, a shout came from the street, "All of you, get out of my way." The crowd turned around and saw an officer riding a large horse leading a large group of soldiers. They began to part the crowd and cut in. The commoners didn't dare to block their way, and the crowd began to squeeze to the sides again. The entrance of the 10,000 flower house was immediately surrounded by a group of soldiers wielding shining long sabers. Although there were soldiers guarding the entrance, the carriages on the street still couldn't enter. Hence, there were more soldiers protecting a group of people who got off the carriages and walked towards Wanhualu. Looking at the clothes of these people, they were probably nobles. Seeing these people easily pass through the crowd with their heads held high, Yu Qianqiu really wanted to throw a few bricks at them, but after thinking about it he held back. The two of them squeezed into the crowd and waited for more than 2 hours. After the soldiers had probably escorted hundreds of nobles in, they finally retreated and guarded the entrance of Wanhualu, not letting random people in. Then a few rich people who were escorted by their servants were allowed in after negotiating with the tortoise bus at the entrance. As for the people squeezing on the street, they were basically commoners or people who weren't rich or powerful, so they were naturally prevented from entering. They could only watch from the outside. Damn it! The #1 courtesan of the world's #1 courtesan. This daddy here hangs out with the third young master of the National Pillar General's estate, who holds great military power, but I can't even enter a brothel. Damn it. Yu Qianqiu was so angry that his nose almost became crooked. He glared at Shi Xiaotian, who was shaking his head and smiling bitterly. He was very unhappy. A trace of ruthlessness flashed across his face. He raised his hand and shouted, "The third young master of the National Pillar General's estate has arrived." Chapter 220. His voice was loud and clear. The moment the name Pillar of the State General was announced, it immediately produced a miraculous effect. The clamoring crowd immediately quietened down. Shua. Everyone turned their heads to look in one direction. Becoming the center of attention, Shi Xiaotian was momentarily stunned. He never expected Yu Qianqiu to make such a move. At the entrance of the 1,000-flower brothel, the military officer holding the saber by his waist looked over in shock. Yu Qianqiu, who was dressed as a house servant, was naturally unable to attract his attention. Seeing Shi Xiaotian in his luxurious robes, he was a little shocked. As the third young master of the Pillar of the State General's residence, although Shi Xiaotian rarely appeared in public, he had still seen him on a few occasions. As a soldier, the Pillar of the State General who had been fighting at the western borders for many years was undoubtedly the idol of the entire Wuxia Empire. He also had a very high prestige among the citizens of the empire. Especially last year, when the general's 2 million soldiers split into 6 groups and defeated the 6 countries, forcing the 6 countries to sign an armistice, it pushed the reputation of the Pillar of the State General to the peak. In their hearts, the Pillar of the State General was the guardian of the Wuxia Empire. Out of the way! The military officer shouted excitedly. The citizens also had a look of surprise on their faces as they squeezed to the side, afraid to block Shi Xiaotian's path. The military officer waved his hand, and the soldiers guarding the 1,000-flower brothel immediately split into 2 groups, rushing into the path that the citizens had vacated. They lined up neatly on both sides of the path. The military officer strode towards Shi Xiaotian and waved his hand to open his cloak. Holding the saber in his hand, he knelt down on one knee and said in a clear voice, "This general is the City Guard Patrol Commander Yuan Fei. Greetings, third young master." Greetings, third young master. The 2 rows of guards and the guards of the 1,000-flower brothel all knelt down in unison. It was unknown which citizen knelt down first, but the citizens of the entire street all knelt down with difficulty. Because it was simply too crowded, they all shouted, "This humble citizen greets third young master. This humble citizen greets third young master." Their shouts rang out one after another, and it was clear that they were all heartfelt respect. Shi Xiaotian was a little embarrassed. Coming to a brothel in the name of the National Pillar General's residence was not something to be proud of. Yu Qianqiu was dumbfounded. He didn't expect the Pillar of the State General to have such high prestige among the soldiers and citizens. He couldn't help but feel regret for his actions earlier. To have caused the citizens to love the pillar of the state general in such a manner. His conscience really couldn't be justified. After all, he was a soldier in his previous life. To be able to command such respect from the citizens, it was impossible to do so without experiencing 1,000 miles of bloodshed. Yu Qianqiu was truly ashamed to have tarnished the reputation of a general like this. The nobles and the rich who had entered the 10,000 flower house were also shocked by the continuous shouts outside. Third young master? Which family's third young master had come to cause such a big commotion? They sent their servants to the door to inquire. All the soldiers and civilians on the street knelt down. Only the 2 young men dressed as a master and a servant stood out, making the servants speechless. At this moment, Shi Xiaotian couldn't help but roll his eyes at Yu Qianqiu with a little complaint. The latter smiled awkwardly. Shi Xiaotian circulated his true yuan and said loudly, "My fellow citizens, please get up. I, Shi Xiaotian, am not worthy of such a big greeting." His voice surged through the entire street, drowning out everyone's greetings. The soldiers and commoners were shocked. What a loud voice! As expected of the son of the national pillar general. Like father, like son. Everyone thanked him and said, "Thank you, third young master." They got up with difficulty. "Commander Yuan, please get up." Shi Xiaotian reached out to help Yuan Fei up. When the latter heard the former's loud voice and saw him coming to help him up, his competitive spirit was secretly aroused. He wanted to see if he had real skills or was just using his voice to scare people, who knew that he didn't even have the strength to resist, and was lifted up just like that. Yuan Fei couldn't help but be shocked. What great strength! His gaze swept past the sword hanging on Shi Xiaotian's waist. No wonder he was brought up in such a manner. Seeing their commander stand up, the soldiers also stood up. Yuan Fei waved his hand and said, "Third young master, please." "You're welcome." Shi Xiaotian cupped his hands and walked forward under Yuan Fei's lead. Yu Qianqiu followed behind dejectedly. Stepping into the myriad flower house, Yuan Fei stayed outside to continue guarding while the pimp led the master and servant in. The lanterns were lit, and the myriad flower house was filled with guests. Alluring women were walking around with plates of fruits, wine and all kinds of delicacies. Hearing that the third young master of the national pillar general's residence had arrived, the nobles who were already seated gathered downstairs to greet him. In terms of status and rank, there was no need to greet him. Many of the nobles had a higher rank than the national pillar general. However, he was the one who held the strongest military power in the empire. He was someone who could make the entire Wuxia empire tremble with a stomp of his foot. He was much stronger than those nobles who only had titles in name only. Shi Xiaotian gracefully greeted the crowd. One moment it was that little prince, the next moment it was this little prince. Shi Xiaotian handled the situation with ease. Yu Qianqiu nodded to himself. As expected of someone from the upper class, today he had finally witnessed the power of the national pillar general's residence. He had a new plan in mind. They were in an enclosure, with a big performance stage in the middle. There were 2 levels of seats for spectators. The upper level was an open single room, while the lower level was a circle of single-table banquets. This should be the place where the courtesan Belle would sing and dance tonight to celebrate peace and prosperity. Shi Xiaotian arrived late. The single room upstairs had already been occupied. However, there was no need to worry. Naturally, there were people who knew their place and left one for him. The 2 of them were in a single room on the 2nd floor, one sitting and one standing. The one standing behind Shi Xiaotian was, of course, Yu Qianqiu. A servant couldn't possibly sit with his master in public, could he? Wanhua Lu had arranged for some prostitutes to come over. However, Yu Qianqiu felt that they were too unattractive. He found an excuse that the third young master didn't want to be disturbed and chased them out. He was used to seeing beauties in the cultivation world. Naturally, he wasn't interested in the so-called beauties here. If it wasn't for the fact that he still wanted to see the courtesan that everyone was fighting for, he might have turned around and left. Soon, the performance on the central stage began. For a moment, the sound of zither, flute, and drums rang out. More than a dozen graceful women danced gracefully, causing the crowd to cheer. Yu Qianqiu originally thought that they were going to do a striptease or something. Who knew that after wandering around for a long time, there wasn't anything interesting at all. One group after another went down, and another group changed into different styles. They didn't have the awareness of a brothel at all. He really didn't understand why those princes and nobles were cheering. Yu Qianqiu wished that he could throw a grenade down and let those women who were baring their fangs and brandishing their claws quickly get off the stage. He wanted that courtesan to come up and take a look as soon as possible. If she didn't look good, then they should leave as soon as possible to avoid wasting time. This brothel was too boring. The music played by those musicians didn't have any passion at all. When it fell into his ears, it was like a lullaby. It made him sleepy and yawn repeatedly. After an unknown amount of time, just as he was in a semi-conscious state, the commotion around him woke him up. The lonely and light sound of the zither entered his ears, and it was quite refreshing. When he looked again, the surrounding princes and nobles were all leaning against the railings to watch. The courtesan is coming out, Shi Xiaotian said softly. He also walked to the railings to watch. Yu Qianqiu's eyes lit up. He had been waiting for the stars and the moon. Finally, it was here. He also followed. In the depths of the lanterns, a figure dressed in a light gauze and thin red palace dress leisurely walked over. A long white jade hairpin was inserted into her jet-black hair bun. The two ends of the hairpin were pulled up by a red veil that covered her face. Her pretty face was faintly discernible. It was hard to see clearly, but it was exceptionally alluring. Her white and tender lily-white hands were hugging a plain zither. One side of her ample chest was lightly pressed against it, making the other side even more abruptly perky. The red veil covered her perky buttocks, trying to cover her slender jade legs. However, the boundless spring scenery was always inadvertently revealed when her jade legs strode forward. The beauty dressed in red lightly walked onto the stage. She put down the jade zither on the table that had already been set up by someone. She nodded slightly to the surrounding people, and then sat down peacefully. The red veil on both sides of her buttocks was quietly pulled open, revealing her white and tender thighs. Good! Someone clapped and shouted. Immediately, it caused a loud commotion. Everyone agreed one after another. Yu Qianqiu finally became spirited. He clapped with all his might. Damn it! He finally saw someone who was pleasing to the eye. Although he couldn't see her face clearly, just based on her figure alone, it was already top-notch. The single room for the two of them was in a good position. The courtesan happened to be facing the two of them, so they could slowly admire her. 10 jade-like fingers pressed down on the strings of the zither, gently evoking a quiet and exquisite sound. The surroundings immediately quietened down. Yu Qianqiu nodded. At first he sounded a little sad, but it was still a little interesting. At least he was able to continue listening. The sound of the zither reverberated faintly. The face under the red veil suddenly sang softly. I am a fox that has cultivated for 1,000 years. 1,000 years of cultivation. 1,000 years of loneliness. The smile on Yu Qianqiu's face instantly froze. Then it started to twitch. Chapter 221. It was a completely different tune from the Wuxia Empire, with a different style and singing style. However, it was undeniable that it was indeed pleasant to the ears. It was completely different from the current high-pitched tunes that were popular. It was simple and mellow, yet moving. Even those ignorant and incompetent hedonistic sons could immediately understand the meaning behind it. Gradually, the image of a white fox trapped in love for 1,000 years appeared in everyone's mind. White fox. Shi Xiaotian's face was also filled with shock. How did this popular tune in the cultivation world spread to the myriad flower house in the secular world? Moreover, the person who composed this tune was right beside him. The two of them looked at each other, completely losing the mood to look at beauties. They looked at the hua kuei again. Although they couldn't be sure, they had a feeling that the other party was sizing them up intentionally or unintentionally. This hua kuei was probably not simple. The surrounding nobles had previously been drooling over the hua kuei's beauty, but now they were completely immersed in the hua kuei's singing. Even after the song ended, they still couldn't extricate themselves. After a long time, Their exclamations turned into cheers. They all felt that this trip was not in vain, so they rewarded the Hua Kuei with gold and silver ingots. However, the Hua Kuei seemed to be indifferent to the praises and rewards of the crowd. Yu Qianqiu and Shi Xiaotian were no longer in the mood to stay. They turned around and were about to leave quietly. Suddenly, a coquettish voice transmitted into Yu Qianqiu's ears. I didn't expect that the abandoned disciple of Fuxian Island that the entire Cultivation Alliance is looking for would actually be involved with the pillar of the state generals. Yu Qianqiu stopped in his tracks and suddenly turned to look at the Hua Kuei downstairs. Who else could it be if not her who was able to sing the White Fox? The other party could actually transmit a voice. It was clear that her cultivation was above the tribulation stage. No wonder he couldn't tell. Who was this person? Unfortunately, his cultivation was not at the stage where he could transmit a voice. He couldn't question her in public, could he? He could only reveal a stern and questioning gaze. Seeing his reaction, Shi Xiaotian also stopped. He didn't know what he was going to do. Yo. The third son of the National Pillar General was actually an early-stage foundation establishment cultivator. Hee. Yu Qianqiu, you've really found a good hiding place. Yu Qianqiu heard Hua Kuei's laughter again. Don't look at me like that. You want to know who I am? Then let's meet at the top of the highest mountain in the western suburbs of the capital. Come quickly. Otherwise, I can't guarantee that the Cultivation Alliance won't find out about the relationship between you and the National Pillar General's residence. Hee. After Hua Kuei finished transmitting her voice, she picked up her zither and quietly walked away amidst the cries of pain from the crowd. She only left the crowd with a graceful and extremely alluring back view. Many people beat their chests and stamped their feet, asking everywhere why the Oiran Queen left after just one song. No one could answer. Those who wanted to use force were also stopped by others. Since Myriad Flower Tower was able to establish itself in the Wuxia Empire, they naturally had a powerful background or strength to back them up. They weren't people they could afford to offend just because they wanted to. Yu Qianqiu squinted his eyes as he watched Hua Kuei leave. He whispered into Shi Xiaotian's ear. I have something to attend to. I'll be heading out first. You play by yourself. With that, he left quietly. Shi Xiaotian looked at the departing Hua Kuei, then at the departing Yu Qianqiu. He sat down thoughtfully. After leaving Myriad Flower Tower, Yu Qianqiu found an empty alley and released a flying sword out of thin air. He stepped on the sword and quickly flew towards the western suburbs. The people of the capital naturally couldn't see it in the dark. Even if they did see a stream of light, they would think it was a dazzling light. The highest mountain in the western suburbs was steep. It should be a place with few people. On the mountain, the chirping of insects could be heard. The silver moonlight covered the mountain peak. The rocks on the mountain peak were exposed and could be considered flat. As the mountain wind blew, a few old pine trees swayed under the moonlight. Yu Qianqiu landed on his sword. He flipped the sword in his hand and carefully looked around. Even if the other party was an expert at the end of the tribulation stage, he was confident that he could escape. It wasn't a big place. Under the moonlight, it was clear that the other party hadn't arrived yet. The terrain at the foot of the mountain was dangerous. In the depths of the forest, it seemed a little eerie. Yu Qianqiu looked at the dim lights of the capital. He stood on the mountain peak and welcomed the mountain wind. He held his sword with both hands and quietly waited for the arrival of Myriad Flower Tower's Hua Kuei. Ding ding dong dong. The sound of a zither suddenly sounded behind him. Yu Qianqiu was shocked. He suddenly turned around and his gaze fell on the few old pine trees. A woman wrapped in a red veil sat on the top of the tree and played the zither. Who else could it be other than that Hua Kuei? Damn it. Trying to scare me. Aren't you afraid of pricking your butt while wearing so little? Yu Qianqiu said in a deep voice. Who are you? Why did you ask me to come here? How do you know me? Hua Kuei didn't answer. Instead, she played the zither and sang. Yesterday was like the flowing river in the east, far away from me. Today my heart is in chaos, how troublesome. Did you ask me to come here just to listen to you play and sing? Yu Qianqiu waved his sword and pointed at her. Hua Kuei was completely focused. It was as if she was deeply immersed in her own song. Only when the song was finished did she open her fingers and press on the zither to stop the lingering sound. She sighed and said, "Yu Qianqiu, I heard that the song I played and sang today was composed by you?" "Crazy," Yu Qianqiu said in a deep voice. "So what if I composed it? So what if I didn't?" "Nothing much." On the treetop, Hua Kuei's figure flashed, and under the moonlight, he suddenly appeared beside Yu Qianqiu, leaving behind several afterimages. The latter was startled, and he fiercely jumped back. Whoosh! Nearly 100 flying swords suddenly appeared, and they protected him from all directions. Hua Kuei, who was holding the zither, was startled. She didn't see how Yu Qianqiu could produce so many flying swords at once. She also didn't see him carrying a storage bag. She chuckled and said, "What are you nervous about? But you do have some skills. No wonder you could kill the sect master of Ongquangsung. I'm a little curious. How could that half-baked Hao Wuwei teach a disciple like you?" "That's right, he might have learned it on supporting Immortal Island. But Hao Wuwei doesn't know how to play the zither or sing." "What do you mean by good or bad?" "I don't know him. Who are you? Why did you ask me to come here?" Yu Qianqiu said in a deep voice. "You don't know Hao Wuwei? Oh. Hee, I get it. You should know the Hao Sansi of Ongquangsung, right? Isn't he your master?" Hua Kuei laughed. "What does my master have to do with you?" Hua Kuei smiled and said, "I heard that you offended the sect master of Ongquangsung because of your master's death. That's why you joined supporting Immortal Island." "Yes. You beat up the grandson of the sect master of Ongquangsung in the 100 Flowers Valley. Then, you beat up the son of the Deluo sect master at Hatter Island. Then, you killed Lu Chongqing and his grandson. It looks like you're still brooding over the death of your master, Hao Sansi." I didn't expect Hao Sansi to have taken in a good disciple. He's always thinking about avenging his master. It's only right for a disciple to avenge his master. There's no need for you to flatter him. I find it strange. You didn't invite me here to have a heart-to-heart talk, did you?" Yu Qianqiu sneered. "Only right? Hao Sansi has finally done something right in this life, so his death isn't unjust." Hua Kuei giggled again, laughing so hard that his body trembled. Su Qin, who was in her arms, stood on the ground. She lifted an arm and removed the veil that was tied to her hairpin. Her charming face smiled at Yu Qianqiu. So familiar. Yu Qianqiu was stunned. He searched his mind and suddenly remembered a person. He couldn't help but exclaim, "You're the 100 Charms enchantress of the Demon Illusion Palace." Chapter 222. "Oh, little brother, you have a good memory. I didn't expect you to remember our first meeting. It's not in vain that I've been paying attention to you all these years." Ha! Allure Seductress spread her arms and swept her fingers over the strings of the zither. After a string of homophonic notes, she covered her mouth and laughed. Her breasts rippled, and the red muslin wrapped around her swayed with the mountain wind. The color of her lower body was faintly discernible. She was really charming when she smiled. Yu Qianqiu was stunned and thought, amazing. Among all the beauties he knew, he had never seen a woman like Allure Seductress. She had the charm of a mature woman to the extreme. No wonder she was called Allure Seductress. However, he didn't know whether she was a friend or a foe, so he couldn't be careless. He took a deep breath to calm himself down and said expressionlessly, "Why have you been paying attention to me?" Allure Seductress stopped laughing and shook her head. "Are you really confused or just pretending? Don't you know the relationship between me and your master?" Yu Qianqiu's eyes flickered. He had heard the conversation between her and Lu Wanwan in the Spirit Stone mine. If Hao Wuwei was really his master, Hao Sansi, then the relationship between her and his master was ambiguous. He might even have to call her his master's wife. However, it seemed too ridiculous. How could a dirty old man like his master pick up such an arrogant girl? Besides, Allure Seductress was the master of the enchanted palace. Unless she was a pervert. Allure Seductress seemed to have seen through his mind. She didn't wait for his answer, and told him a story of the past. At that time, Allure Seductress wasn't the master of the enchanted palace yet. When she went down the mountain to gain experience, she happened to meet Hao Wuwei, who was also going down the mountain to gain experience. At that time, he wasn't called Hao Sansi. One was righteous and the other evil, so they started to fight. However, Hao Wuwei was only in the early stage of core formation at that time, while Allure Seductress was in the middle stage of nascent soul. There was a huge gap between their cultivations. As a result, Allure Seductress was not only injured but also captured by Hao Wuwei. The Allure Temptress had always looked down on the hypocrisy of the righteous, so she teased Hao Wuwei by saying that she wouldn't kill him as long as he was willing to join her Phantom Palace. However, Hao Wuwei would rather die than submit. Every time he opened his mouth, he would call her Demoness. As a result, he had angered the Temptress of 100 Charms. Thus, she tormented him until he was on the verge of death. But even if he was on his last breath, Hao Wuwei would rather die than submit. He continued to curse and swear loudly. Allure Seductress was shocked. She didn't expect that there would be a man who wasn't afraid of death in this world. She had never seen a man like this before. Her attitude gradually changed from disdain to ridicule, then to anger, and then from shock to admiration. Such a man was indeed rare in the cultivation world, and it could be said that she was convinced. Then, a dramatic change occurred. Allure Seductress beat Hao Wuwei to death, but in the end, she was the one who healed him. Under her careful care, Hao Wuwei's mood also changed during the healing process. He didn't expect that this seemingly seductive and absurd woman had such a side to her. As a result, there was a problem. When a man and a woman spent a long time together, once they had a good impression of each other, it couldn't be stopped and the two of them developed feelings for each other. To be exact, the two of them fell in love. In the cultivation world, it was absolutely forbidden for righteous and evil to fall in love with each other, especially in the righteous. Hao Wuwei, who had recovered from his injuries, returned to Kuangsung uneasily. He didn't dare to mention this matter to his master. However, Allure Seductress was a woman who dared to love and hate. This might be the difference between evil and righteous. Allure Seductress couldn't bear the pain of lovesickness, so she secretly went to Kuangsung to find Hao Wuwei. As a result, Hao Wuwei was scared to death and advised her not to come to Kuangsung anymore. His words almost made Allure Seductress die of anger. "I'm not afraid. What are you afraid of? A man who isn't even afraid of death is afraid of this?" She was so angry that she simply revealed her whereabouts in Kuangsung and quickly escaped. Her willfulness didn't cause any trouble for herself, but it caused Hao Wuwei to suffer. When the matter was exposed and he was reprimanded by the sect, Hao Wuwei honestly confessed what had happened and almost lost his life. If it weren't for the fact that his master happened to be the sect master of Kuangsung and wanted to protect him, there wouldn't be Hao Sansi in the future. In fact, back then, the sect master of Kuangsung thought very highly of this disciple, and even wanted to train him to be his successor. However, this matter was completely ruined. The sect master was heartbroken and reprimanded his disciple severely. He also changed his name to Hao Sansi, which meant that he should think twice before doing anything. In the end, he couldn't avoid the punishment and swore never to have any contact with Allure Seductress again. He even made a fuss and faced the wall to reflect on his mistakes for 10 years. After that, Allure Seductress was a little regretful, but she held on. In the end, the two of them really didn't see each other for decades. By coincidence, when the two of them met again, Allure Seductress couldn't believe her eyes. Hao Wuwei, who was upright and outspoken in the past, had actually become a sloppy old man. She found an opportunity to stop him alone and interrogate him. However, he said that his name was Hao Sansi, and that he didn't know Allure Seductress or Hao Wuwei. She mistook him for someone else. After that, he smiled amiably and left. That's right, Allure Seductress cultivated a kind of seduction technique, which had the effect of retaining one's youth. However, with Hao Wuwei's cultivation, he shouldn't have aged so quickly and become so much older than her. Even if he did age quickly, how could it be so easy for two people who had been in love for so many years to mistake each other? Both of them weren't ordinary people. Moreover, How could she hide the inexplicable sadness that flashed through Hao Wuwei's smiling eyes? After she spent a lot of effort to figure out what had happened to Hao Wuwei, Allure Seductress cried bitterly for 3 days and 3 nights. She brought all the misfortune to Hao Wuwei. After that, she begged Ong Kwangsung several times, wanting to meet Hao Wuwei. However, how could Ong Kwangsung agree to her request of a demon? It was already good enough that he didn't kill her. Therefore, she tried to force her way in several times, but how could Allure Seductress break in alone? She almost lost her life in Ong Kwangsung's hands. After understanding that one person's strength was too insignificant for Ong Kwangsung, Allure Seductress made up her mind and concentrated on her cultivation. After another decade, she sat on the position of the palace master of the enchanted palace as she wished. When she finally firmly grasped the entire enchanted palace in her hands, and was about to visit Ong Kwangsung again, she didn't expect that Hao Wuwei would be killed. Allure Seductress felt like she was struck by lightning. Everything she had done all these years was for Hao Wuwei. Who knew that it would end up like this? For a moment, Allure Seductress was filled with boundless anger. However, the culprit, Daoyuo sect, was not something that her enchanted palace could afford to offend. Therefore, she picked Ong Kwangsung to vent her anger first. Later, when Ong Kwangsung's spirit stone mine was attacked, Yu Qianqiu personally experienced it. After that, Enchanted Palace was wiped out by Ong Kwangsung in retaliation. This was also something that the entire cultivation world knew. This story was a bit too melodramatic. After listening to it, Yu Qianqiu was speechless. He didn't know what to say. No wonder Lu Wanwan said that he was Hao Wuwei's disciple. So this was what happened. Zai. That old man really couldn't tell. He really didn't expect that there would be such a romantic past. This Allure Seductress was actually Master's woman. Then wouldn't she really be on the same level as Master's wife? Chapter 223. Hee. What? You didn't expect this, right? The Allure Beauty laughed like a silver bell. I sigh. With a thought, Yu Qianqiu's flying swords disappeared, removing his defense. Scratching his head, he walked in front of the Allure Beauty, smiled bitterly and bowed. Disciple Yu Qianqiu greets Ma. For a moment, he still found it hard to associate Hao Sansi, that old man, with this charming woman. But the two of them had an affair. He had to accept it even if he didn't want to. From the old man's previous signs, he still had this woman in his heart. Otherwise he wouldn't have given up on himself to that extent. If he didn't accept it, his conscience wouldn't be at ease, and the old man wouldn't die in peace. Yo. That's a good boy. The Allure Beauty obviously liked the word am. With a charming smile, she walked closer and teasingly hooked his chin with her finger, and even put her arm around his shoulder. That pair of bouncy and plump breasts rubbed against his shoulder from time to time, causing Yu Qianqiu to smile bitterly. Was this woman really as infatuated as she said? Sigh. What a stunner. Damn it. It was really irritating. Unfortunately, he wouldn't do that kind of thing even if he was beaten to death. Cough cough. That. Why did you go to a place like 10,000 Flower Brothel? Yu Qianqiu changed the topic, and took the opportunity to stand further away. He didn't want to cause a nosebleed in front of am. What do you mean? What do you mean I went to a place like 10,000 Flower Brothel? 10,000 Flower Brothel originally belonged to the Enchanted Palace. What's so strange about me, the palace master, being in my own territory? The Allure Beauty laughed. What? Yu Qianqiu was stunned. So Enchanted Palace also runs a brothel? That's not right. As far as I know, before Enchanted Palace fell, this 10,000 Flower Brothel already existed. You brat, your words are really unpleasant. The temptress rolled her eyes and sighed. Forget it, you're quite pleasing to the eye. I'll tell you some secrets. Did you think that after Ong Kwangsung razed the Phantom Palace to the ground, I would have no place to stay and could only hide in a brothel? Was that not the case? Yu Qianqiu smiled noncommittally. This cheap mistress had really gotten into character. The 100 Charms Beauty rolled her eyes again and continued. You should know the Pink Sect, which is ranked 10th in the Devil Dao and ranked 9th after my magical illusion palace fell, right? The red-pink sect was known for its charm techniques. The 10,000 flower house in the secular world was opened by the red-pink sect. Other than being the illusory demon palace's palace mistress, I'm also the sect master of the pink sect. You don't know this, right? Ah. Yu Qianqiu was stunned. To be exact, he was confused by this complicated relationship. The 10,000 flower house originally belonged to the magical illusion palace, and now it was opened by the pink sect. After sorting out his thoughts, he finally understood. He really didn't expect that this mistress had a double identity. She was actually in charge of two big sections. The 100 Charms Beauty said disdainfully. Outsiders thought that the magical illusion palace, which is ranked 5th in the Devil Dao, couldn't withstand the attack of the righteous Dao's ranked 6th, Ongquangsung, and collapsed just like that. But who knew that my magical illusion palace had diverted more than half of its strength to run the pink sect? It was really because of the sudden incident that we were caught unprepared by Ongquangsung, and suffered a big loss. Otherwise, with Ongquangsung's strength, it wouldn't have been so easy to succeed. I don't understand this. Yu Qianqiu frowned and said, why did your magical illusion palace divert more than half of its strength to run the pink sect? Wouldn't it be better to spend more effort to improve the magical illusion palace's strength? Otherwise, it wouldn't have suffered losses under Ongquangsung's hands. Do you think it's easy for me, a woman, to sit in the position of magical illusion palace's palace master? The 100 Charms Beauty asked back and faintly let out a breath and said, since I, a woman, have taken the position, I naturally have to come up with means to convince my subordinates. For a long time, my magical illusion palace has always been ranked 5th in the Devil Dao. In the past, which sect master didn't want to improve their strength, and didn't want to take a step forward in the ranking? But if you send them up, the sects above them will inevitably come down. Let's not talk about the righteous Dao's reaction for now. Once you threaten the top-ranked sects, then your sect will inevitably be suppressed by the higher-ups, and it will be very difficult to take a step forward. So when I first took office, I began to quietly divert people to develop the pink sect. The effect is very obvious. Those top sects won't spend too much effort to pay attention to such a small sect. With the support of my magical illusion palace, the pink sect climbed to the 10th place in just a few years. With this credit, it also allowed me to sit firmly in the position of magical illusion palace master. Master's wife is really wise and powerful. This disciple admires you. After flattering her, Yu Qianqiu smiled and said, Master's wife told me such a big secret. Aren't you afraid that this disciple will leak it? Leak my secret? The 100 Charms Beauty looked him up and down, looking at him like she was looking at a stupid pig, and sneered. You should worry about yourself. The Deluo sect wants to get rid of you as soon as possible. Ongquangsung has even put up a bounty for your capture. The entire Cultivation Alliance is looking for you everywhere. And the Devil Dao is also looking for you everywhere. Unless you continue to hide in the National Pillar General's office and continue to be a servant, don't show your face in the cultivation world. Once your whereabouts are exposed, you should be prepared to be killed by the righteous Dao, or join the Devil Dao. Yu Qianqiu was stunned. He naturally didn't know about this, and couldn't help but smile and said, Master's wife, are you trying to scare me? I'm just a core formation realm disciple. How could I cause such a big commotion between the righteous and Devil Dao? The 100 Charms Beauty casually plucked the strings of the zither beside her, and leisurely said, the person who provides Yu Qianqiu's whereabouts will be rewarded with 1 million high-grade spirit stones. The person who takes Yu Qianqiu's head will be rewarded with 5 million high-grade spirit stones. And the person who captures Yu Qianqiu alive will be rewarded with 10 million high-grade spirit stones. If you don't believe me, go to the capital and shout, I am Yu Qianqiu. Then you will know whether I'm telling the truth or not. Yu Qianqiu looked towards the direction of the dimly lit capital, and his face twitched. He didn't have the guts to try. In fact, he didn't even need to try to know that he killed Sect Master Ongquangsung, so the other party definitely wouldn't let him go easily. It's fine to be a coward once in a while, but it's not in my character to be a coward all the time. As the saying goes, the first to strike gains the upper hand, and the last to strike suffers a calamity. Since both the righteous and Devil Dao are after me, then come. Who's afraid of who? If worse comes to worst, I'll just go back to Utopia and farm. Besides, I haven't fully used my troops yet. A bunch of dogs, do they really think I'm easy to step on? Thinking of this, Yu Qianqiu narrowed his eyes and lightly snorted, and a trace of ruthlessness flashed across his face. The 100 Charms beauty had been sizing him up with a smile. Mistress, you didn't call me here just to tell me this, did you? Yu Qianqiu turned around and asked. Of course not. The 100 Charms beauty smiled and said, I also didn't expect to meet you today. I'm telling you this because I know you want to avenge your master. And I also want to avenge your master. That's why I'm telling you this, and, Yu Qianqiu asked with an inquisitive look in his eyes. The 100 Charms beauty deliberately paused, then chuckled and said, and I also know that you definitely have someone helping you. I heard that when you killed Lu Chongqing in Swallow City, you brought hundreds of men in black, and there seem to be experts at the end of the tribulation passing stage. Otherwise, it would have been very difficult for you to kill Lu Chongqing with your ability. So, back then, when I was at the Spirit Stone mine in Ongquangsung, I planted a strand of divine sense on you. Who knew that it would be dispelled in the blink of an eye? It seems that your background isn't simple. Chapter 224. So she was talking about this. It seemed like there were quite a few sects that knew about this. Yu Qianqiu praised disapprovingly. Master's wife is really well informed. You even know about this. When it comes to being well informed, I'm afraid there's no sect in the entire cultivation world that can compare to my pink sect. You must know that the purpose of my pink sect opening 10,000 flower houses in various places is to facilitate the investigation and transmission of information. Just like the trouble you've caused in Swallow City, I'll know within an hour, the 100 Charm beauty said proudly. Yu Qianqiu was slightly taken aback. The myriad flower brothel had opened almost everywhere in the Wuxia Empire. Thinking about it carefully, the net-like myriad flower brothel was indeed very useful for gathering information. But how much manpower and money did it take? Gathering information in the cultivation world was not something that ordinary people could do. No wonder the enchanted palace was taken down by Ongquangsung. It turned out that it had been emptied long ago. But why did she say this to me? With a thought, Yu Qianqiu asked doubtfully, Master's wife, could it be that you want us to join forces and avenge Master together? Smart. 100 Charm beauty smiled and said, I also want to see what kind of people are behind you. Why can't I find anything with my information channels? As he spoke, he leaned over with his body fragrance, as if he had no bones. Yu Qianqiu was really afraid of her. She would come over and touch him at the slightest provocation. It was true that he wanted to take advantage of her, but he couldn't do anything serious. So he didn't know who was taking advantage of who. He could only pretend to think of something, and quietly took a step away. He frowned and said, I do have some people behind me, but I'm afraid it won't be easy for Master's wife to meet them. What? Master's wife, I told you so many secrets. Are you still going to keep them from me? 100 Charm beauty crossed her arms and smiled. Naturally, it became an attractive scenery. Master's wife, don't misunderstand. Yu Qianqiu said solemnly. Master's wife wants to meet them. Unless you are willing to give them all your strength, they won't meet you. This time, 100 Charm beauty couldn't laugh anymore. Give them all my strength? Wasn't this a joke? She stared at Yu Qianqiu with sparkling eyes and frowned. Yu Qianqiu, tell me honestly, are you being controlled by the person behind you? Let me tell you, even if your master was still alive, he wouldn't want you to sacrifice yourself to avenge him. What was this cheap master's wife thinking? Who was controlling who? Yu Qianqiu was slightly stunned. And then he felt a little touched. It seemed that she really had deep feelings for his master. How sancy. Otherwise, she wouldn't be so concerned about him. He shook his head and said, Master's wife, you are mistaken. I am not controlled by them. I am just very good friends with them. Seeing that he was unwilling to speak, the allure beauty didn't force him. She sighed and said, It's not that I don't want to let go of the authority in my hands, but the human heart is unpredictable. Before I take revenge for your master, it's impossible for me to hand over the power in my hands to others. Actually, I've been tired of this kind of life for a long time. I can't compare to you men. No matter how high my cultivation is, I'm still a woman. I don't want to live forever either. Her tone was full of helplessness. Yu Qianqiu smiled awkwardly. He actually wanted to take control of the Allure Beauty's power, but after hearing her words, he could only give up on that idea. The moon was enchanting, and the night breeze was refreshing. The two fell into a short silence. Master's wife, can you find the locations of all the spirit stone mines in Deluo sect and on Kwangsung? Yu Qianqiu suddenly asked. What do you want? The Allure Beauty suddenly turned around and asked. Hee. Yu Qianqiu sneered and said. Since you dare to have designs on me, you have to pay a price. Didn't you attack one of on Kwangsung's spirit stone mines in the past? This time, I want to learn from Master's wife. The Allure Beauty frowned slightly and said. You want the locations of all the spirit stone mines in both sects. Why? Is it very difficult? Yu Qianqiu asked. The Allure Beauty shook her head and said. The information on the spirit stone mines of all the major sects is readily available. I can give it to you anytime you want. However, since I caused a ruckus in the past, all the sects have strengthened their defenses around the spirit stone mines. If you have designs on so many places at once, I'm afraid it will be very dangerous. Seeing that she was so concerned about him, Yu Qianqiu was once again moved. He smiled and said, Don't worry, Master's wife, I am very afraid of death. I will not joke around with my life. I have my own plans for the specific operation. The Allure Beauty nodded and said, All right, I will organize it for you tonight. If you want, you can come to 10,000 Flower House to find me. Then disciple will thank Master's wife in advance. Yu Qianqiu saluted, then looked at the sky and said, Disciple still has something to do, so I will take my leave first. Finished speaking, he summoned a flying sword and was about to leave. However, the Allure Beauty laughed and said, Why are you in such a hurry to leave? Are you afraid that I will eat you? Damn. She was just being serious for a while. Why is she here again? Yu Qianqiu looked around. This really was a good place to do dirty things. There was no need to be afraid of people disturbing him. He couldn't help but smile bitterly and said, Could it be that Master's wife wants disciple to accompany you to see the scenery? Not today. Next time, I will find a chance to let you accompany me to see the scenery. The Allure Beauty giggled nonstop, walked closer and said, You are leaving just like this? Are you not going to give Master's wife a gift? Master's wife, whatever you want, just say it. As long as it is within my means, I will give it to you. Yu Qianqiu said helplessly. Meeting this kind of master's wife, there was really nothing he could do. He was really afraid that she would ask him to marry her, so should he refuse? The Allure Beauty didn't answer for a long time. Instead, she leisurely paced around a few times. The moonlight vividly showed off the curves under her thin veil. Yu Qianqiu took a breath and looked to the side. I heard that the two songs circulating in the cultivation world were composed by you. Why don't you compose a song for Master's wife as a gift? This won't force you, right? The Allure Beauty finally said the gift she wanted for their first meeting. Since Master's wife has asked, how can disciple dare to disobey? Master's wife, please wait a moment, let me think about it. After finishing speaking, Yu Qianqiu also let out a sigh of relief. So this is what you want, I will just casually pirate a song for you. Seeing him slowly pondering, the Allure Beauty's eyes lit up. It should be known that Yu Qianqiu's two songs had spread throughout the cultivation world. Everyone would regard them as classics, especially women, who especially liked them. However, there were not many people who knew that it was composed by this Yu Qianqiu in front of her. Unexpectedly, as soon as she asked, he actually agreed. Seeing him in deep thought, the Allure Beauty thought that he was racking his brains to come up with ideas in his mind. However, she didn't know which song he was thinking about. Of course, the song couldn't be too avant-garde. It definitely wouldn't work if he came up with something like, haha, use nunchakus. It must be something that ancient people could understand and suitable for her. After a long time, she saw him nodding as if he had understood something. He walked to the Allure Beauty's zither, grabbed it, walked to a rock on the cliff, sat cross-legged, put the zither on his knees, and slightly adjusted his mood. Then he said indifferently, "Master's wife, this song is for you on behalf of Master." The Allure Beauty was stunned. Just when she was about to say something, she heard the sound of the zither, so she had to calm down and listen. As her thoughts sank along with the prelude, how Wu Wei's appearance in the past appeared in front of her eyes, as if he wanted to tell her something. At this time, Yu Qianqiu had already started to sing along with the sound of the zither. Don't mention the past again. Life is full of ups and downs. Even if the memory can't be erased, love and hate are still in the heart. If you really want to cut off the past and let tomorrow continue, you don't have to painstakingly ask for my news. Love is a difficult problem, dazzling and confusing. Maybe it's possible to forget the pain, but it's too difficult to forget you. You never really left, you are always in my heart, I still love you, I can't do anything about myself. Because I still have a dream, I still have you in my heart, I'm always easily moved by the past, I always feel heartache for you. Don't be reluctant to stay in the years. I have thousands of unintentional tenderness. Don't ask me if we will meet again. Don't care if my words are insincere. Why don't you understand? As long as there is love, there will be pain. One day you will know, life will not be different without me. Life is already too fast. I'm so afraid, always with tears in my eyes. Forget me. There will be no pain. Leave the past in the wind. The moonlight was like silver. The mountain wind was blowing. Yu Qianqiu sat on the edge of the cliff and sang with all his heart. At this time, the temptress was no longer as seductive as before. Her eyes were already full of tears. She looked like she was scared out of her wits. As if she was talking to someone, her mouth muttered, "Don't mention the past. I really have to cut the past. Maybe it's possible to forget the pain, but it's not easy to forget you. You are always in my heart. As long as there is love, there will be pain. Forget me. There will be no pain. Leave the past in the wind." "Wu Wei, are you talking to me?" After playing and singing a few times, Yu Qianqiu let out a breath, stood up and turned around. Seeing the heartbroken look of the temptress, he was suddenly stunned. He couldn't help but shake his head. "Another infatuated woman. I hope this song is helpful to you. It can make you think better." He walked over and handed over the zither in his hand, softly said, "Master's wife." The temptress wiped away her tears, took the zither, and said with a trembling voice, "Yu Qianqiu, what is the name of this song?" Seeing her like that, Yu Qianqiu really couldn't bear to tell her the name of the song, but he couldn't think of a better name at the moment, so he could only bite the bullet and said, "The name of the song is When Love is Past." "Master's wife, disciple will take his leave first." After saying that, he flew away from the crime scene on his sword. Under the moonlight, on the peak of the mountain, there were a few old pines. The night wind was blowing gently. A woman wrapped in red silk was holding the zither, muttering, "When love is past. When love is past." Chapter 225. In the myriad fragrance garden of Fuxian Island, Ferdinand had been suffering. The father-daughter relationship that had improved with great difficulty had now plummeted back to its original state. Furong once again regarded her father as a stranger. She even avoided him everywhere and didn't want to see him. The cause of the matter was naturally that Yu Qianqiu, who was expelled from Fuxian Island. Ferdinand was also a shrewd person. He naturally saw that his daughter had already lost her chastity to that bastard. However, it was useless even if he was unhappy. Who asked his daughter to like him? He could only wander around the sect every day, hoping to get more news about that brat. Furong didn't have the mood to cultivate these few days. She lay on the bed in the room all day, staring at a purple gold necklace in a daze. This was refined by Yu Qianqiu for her. There was a small transparent crystal ball hanging on the purple necklace. There was a little red in the small ball, which was very beautiful. Yu Qianqiu once told her that the red inside was a drop of his blood. She didn't know how it was put in. "You don't want me anymore? You're going to abandon me?" Furong looked at the necklace in her hand and muttered to herself. Her tears wet the pillow again. She didn't know how many times she had repeated this sentence these few days. Who doesn't want you anymore? A familiar voice suddenly appeared in the room. Furong turned her head to look. Yu Qianqiu, who was dressed in black and wearing a crooked hat, was looking at her and laughing. Furong sat up abruptly and rubbed her eyes a few times. She thought she had seen wrongly. Yu Qianqiu laughed and said, "What? You don't even recognize me, your husband?" Yu Qianqiu. Furong's eyes lit up. She immediately ran down from the bed barefooted and directly jumped onto Yu Qianqiu. She hugged him tightly and didn't let go. She buried her head and cried nonstop. Yu Qianqiu hugged her but with both hands and touched it. He scared and said, "Why are you full of bones? Have you not eaten for a long time? It's not as comfortable as before." Hearing this, Furong immediately stopped crying and got down from his body. Using her hand to feel his body, she frowned and said, "I seem to have lost some weight. Don't you like it?" Sigh. Yu Qianqiu let out a long sigh and carried her to the bed. He crouched down, grabbed her feet that were dirty from stepping on the ground, and carefully patted them clean. He picked up the shoes under the bed and helped her put them on while saying, "My family's Furong is pretty, but if you're as thin as firewood, then you're not pretty. In the future, remember to eat more. Don't think that you can stop eating just because you've reached the core formation realm. Have you seen those old guys on Fuxian Island who often don't eat? Let's not talk about being old, dry and skinny. Do you think you'll look good like that? I don't like it anyway." Furong thought about what he said, and a withered old face appeared in her mind. If she also became like that? Furong shuddered at the thought of it. She hurriedly nodded and said, "Then I'll eat more in the future. You can take me away too." Yu Qianqiu's face twitched a little. It wasn't hard to take her away. The key was that there was already a Chu Ping in Utopia, so there was no problem with Bai Suzhen. He just didn't know how Chu Ping and Furong would react when they met. It was better not to let them meet for the time being. After thinking it through, his expression suddenly became serious. He sat side by side with her and said, "Furong, I want you to do me a favor." Furong, who was previously crying, now seemed to have become a different person with Yu Qianqiu by her side. She nodded excitedly and said, "What do you want me to help with? Do you need spiritual herb seeds? I'll ask my father for it. If he doesn't give it to me, I'll help you steal it." In her impression, every time he asked her for help, it was nothing more than getting spiritual herb seeds. Yu Qianqiu's face twitched again. "With your level, you can steal things from Myriad Fragrance Garden? Wasn't it because that old fellow Ferdinand turned a blind eye to it?" He coughed and said cautiously, "I don't want you to help me with this. I want you to stay in supporting Xian Island and help me be a spy." "What is a spy?" Furong's eyes widened in surprise. Yu Qianqiu acted as if he was serious and whispered in her ear. After Furong heard it, her expression also became serious. She nodded and said, "Don't worry. I'll write down all the news from supporting Xian Island. I'll tell you when you come." "Okay. Then I'll leave the matters here to you. I'll leave first." Yu Qianqiu stood up and said, "Wait." Furong hugged him and said shyly, "Don't you miss me?" Yu Qianqiu was stunned, but he immediately understood. This girl used to be afraid, but now she's tasting it again. He looked around and chuckled. "So it's here? It's not convenient. It won't be good if someone hears us." Furong bit her lip and said with a red face, "We'll be fine as long as we don't make a sound. Is that so?" Yu Qianqiu nodded his head. Then he put his mouth next to her ear and said with a sinister smile, "Then let's try it?" His words were polite, but in fact, his hands were already helping Furong undress. As soon as Yu Qianqiu returned to Utopia, he went straight to Guan Yu's room in the military camp. He took the black clothes from Guan Yu and asked while changing, "How's the new battle plan going?" "No problem," Guan Yu said in a reporting tone. "According to your request, they've been trained to the high standard of ending battles quickly. Chen Feng has also provided enough qi recovery pills according to your request, and they've been distributed to everyone in the army. Each person has 2 storage bags with the capacity of 3 rooms." "Very good." Yu Qianqiu nodded and said, "Have you made arrangements for the 100 people I got last time?" "They've already started cultivating. The basic cultivation techniques are mainly based on the supporting Immortal Islands techniques. Chen Feng has already distributed the newly refined qi storage pills, which will allow them to enter the qi refinement stage as soon as possible. The women under Sister Bai are also planting a large number of spiritual herbs for refining foundation pills. Chen Feng has also started refining foundation pills. I believe that when they reach the 10th level of the qi refinement stage, all of them will be able to break through to the foundation building stage in one go. Guan Yu reported. Yu Qianqiu thought for a moment and said, those who are too old, after breaking through to the foundation building stage, let them open up wastelands and farm. After all, they're old, and it's too late to start cultivating now. Even if they continue to cultivate, there won't be any big breakthroughs. Let them live a few more years. Fighting and killing things aren't suitable for them. It just so happens that we can solve the increasingly tight food supply situation here. Let's try our best to be self-sufficient. That way, we won't have to always go out to buy food. If there's a chance, I'll get more people here. Got it. Guan Yu nodded. Yu Qianqiu's hand that was changing paused, and he said in a deep voice, for this battle, you have to be mentally prepared. I'm afraid that some casualties are unavoidable. I understand. It's impossible to not die in a battle. Guan Yu's tone was a little heavy. After changing into a set of black clothes, the two of them walked together to the military camp's war room. Inside there was a long table. The company and platoon leaders of each company had been waiting for a long time. When they saw the two of them enter, someone shouted, stand up. All of them stood up with a swish and performed the standard military salute taught by Yu Qianqiu. They said in unison, Chief. Chapter 226. Yu Qianqiu raised his hand and saluted back, saying, everyone please sit. With that said, he walked to the end of the long table and sat down. Guan Yu walked to where Yu Qianqiu was supposed to sit. The two of them were facing each other, so their heads had been turned. Originally, Guan Yu was unwilling. Logically speaking, his current position should be the place where the leader of the team was qualified to sit. However, Yu Qianqiu refused because he had not been here for a long time. Guan Yu was the actual person in charge of the daily training and management here. He had to help Guan Yu establish his prestige because Guan Yu, as the chief instructor, had the lowest cultivation level in this group. Although he was working hard to catch up, it was enough for Yu Qianqiu to firmly grasp this point. It was enough for him to be the spiritual leader of this team. The platoon leaders began to report their respective training situation to Guan Yu. Like an outsider, Yu Qianqiu listened attentively and took advantage of this free time to size up everyone. He was quite satisfied with the results. There was no longer the old-fashioned cultivator expression on everyone's faces. Instead, everyone was in high spirits, looking a bit like soldiers. After listening to the reports, Guan Yu began to announce the operation plan to everyone. It was not easy to come by this plan. Some time ago, Yu Qianqiu had obtained the locations of the various sects' spirit stone mines from the Allure Beauty. He had picked the Daoyuo sect and Nongquangsang's mines to study. Only then did he realize that the Allure Beauty had prepared a lot of detailed information for him. The guards of each spirit stone mine, as well as their daily routine, were clearly marked. Yu Qianqiu followed the map and personally investigated each and every one of the spirit stone mines of the Daoyuo sect and Nongquangsang. He did so in secret, not daring to reveal his whereabouts. Finally, he came up with this operation plan. There are 15 spirit stone mines in Daluo sect and 6 in Nongquangsang. Our goal this time is to loot all 21 of them. After Guan Yu revealed his objective, he distributed the Jade Archives to everyone and said, the Jade Archives in your hands contain detailed information about the various spirit stone mines. Everyone looked at each other in dismay. They hadn't expected the battle plan to be so huge. They had to attack 21 spirit stone mines in one go. Expressions of difficulty appeared on their faces. Yu Qianqiu, who was sitting quietly at the back, suddenly laughed and said, everyone, don't hold back. If you have any opinions, feel free to voice them out. Our goal is naturally to better complete this mission. Someone immediately stood up and said, Leader, I'm from the Exalted Sect, so I have some understanding of their spirit stone mines. Ever since the Phantom Palace attacked on Kwangsung's spirit stone mines, the defenses of the Exalted Sect's spirit stone mines have been strengthened. Every spirit stone mine now has an early-stage tribulation passing elder overseeing it. Although our three companies have the advantage in numbers and strength, we don't have anyone who can fight against a tribulation passing cultivator. I'm afraid that even if we manage to take down one mine, we will still suffer heavy casualties. Let's not talk about Kwangsung. It's basically impossible for us to take down all 15 of the Exalted Sect's spirit stone mines one by one. When he finished speaking, Yu Qianqiu raised his hand and gestured for him to sit down. Then, he smiled and nodded at Guan Yu. The leader has already taken your concerns into consideration and has made detailed arrangements to deal with them. Let me brief you all on the overall situation. Guan Yu glanced at the crowd and said in a loud voice, Kwangsung has 6 spirit stone mines. Each mine is guarded by a late-stage nascent soul cultivator, 3 mid-stage nascent soul and 3 early-stage nascent soul cultivators, a total of 15 core formation cultivators, more than 50 foundation establishment cultivators, and 150 miners of varying cultivation levels. This kind of strength is a piece of cake for us. It won't be a problem to take them down one by one. As for the Exalted Sect's 15 spirit stone mines, at this point, Guan Yu's expression became serious. He stood up and continued. Each mine is guarded by an early-stage tribulation-passing cultivator. There are 10 nascent soul cultivators, nearly 50 core formation and foundation establishment cultivators, and nearly 200 miners. Most of them are at the foundation establishment stage. Most of them are at the qi condensation stage like Kwangsung. If the Exalted Sect didn't send an early-stage tribulation-passing cultivator to guard the mines, it wouldn't be a problem. In view of this, Leader has already set up an early tribulation transcendence cultivator in each of the 15 Daluo Sect mines. As soon as we take action, the cultivator will help us tie down the enemy tribulation transcendence expert. And if something goes wrong, Leader will ask Misty Palace's Big Sister Bai to personally take action. I'm sure no one doubts Big Sister Bai's strength. Everyone exchanged glances and nodded. Naturally, this arrangement wouldn't be a problem. However, where did Leader find 15 tribulation-passing cultivators? Could it be that Leader has another force? At this time, someone stood up and asked, Instructor, this is a good idea, but as long as we attack one of the spirit stone mines, the sects will be alerted. What if the Exalted Sect and Kwangsung send a large number of experts? I believe that both the Exalted Sect and Kwangsung are not people we can withstand. How are we going to attack the other spirit stone mines then? Yu Qianqiu sat at the back with a smile and didn't say anything. His subordinate's words were a little discouraging, but he didn't mind at all. This was exactly the atmosphere he needed. Only when everyone was involved would they be motivated to work together. Only then could they make up for the flaws in the battle plan. After all, he wasn't an immortal who could plan everything perfectly. Guan Yu raised his hand and gestured for the man to sit down. He said, Company Commander first. Leader has already considered your concerns. Therefore, there is a very important task for your company to complete in this battle plan. Company Commander first, I want you to find a map of the mines in the Jade Archive. The location marked 1 on the map is the location of the communication array in each mine. Before we attack, you will first take out a platoon of soldiers and hand them over to Leader to command. Leader will lead them to completely destroy the communication array in the Spirit Stone mines. This is to prevent the news of the attack from leaking out. At the same time, all the troops will end the battle as quickly as possible. Do any of you have any questions? Everyone shook their heads and sent their divine senses into the Jade Archives to examine them. Sure enough, there were maps of 21 Spirit Stone mines within. Upon closer inspection, they realized that their training during this period of time had been for the purpose of preparing to attack these Spirit Stone mines. The location marked 1 should be the location of the communication array in the mines. Guan Yu looked around at everyone and said in a deep voice, Since there are no more questions, the attack will proceed according to the latest training method. Dismissed and get ready. Yes. Everyone got up and quickly left the war room to make their own arrangements. At this moment, Yu Qianqiu said in a deep voice, Yunchang, in an hour, all combat troops will assemble and depart. An hour later, a hurried and loud bugle call rang out in the camp. A group of fully equipped men in black clothes and masks quickly rushed out of the barracks and assembled in 3 groups at the plaza. Guan Yu rode his tall horse and paced back and forth below the stage. Yu Qianqiu stood on the stage with his hands behind his back and looked down at the people below. At this moment, a ray of light descended from the entrance of the camp. Chu Ping had arrived with little Wu Chou. The 2 of them had been attracted by the bugle call. During this period of time, little Wu Chou had become attached to this beautiful sister-in-law of his. Every day, she would bring him along to experience the feeling of flying on a sword. The little brat was having a great time. Just as the 2 of them were about to step into the camp, they were stunned by the formation inside. There were so many people standing together in a strange black color. They were lined up in a neat square formation, but it was so quiet that only the sound of breathing could be heard. A strong killing intent emanated from the camp, forcing the 2 of them to stay away from it. Little Wu Chou was startled by the aura. He hid behind his sister-in-law and peeked at his brother, who was looking down at them from the stage. Yu Qianqiu glanced at the 2 people at the entrance. He raised an arm and opened his palm towards the crowd. After he covered everyone with his divine sense, he shouted in a deep voice, "Depart!" In an instant, all the people on and off the stage disappeared. There was no one left in the camp. Chu Ping, and little Wu Chou didn't dare to go in. They held hands and left in silence. Chapter 227. Behind a barren hillside, hundreds of men in black suddenly appeared. They immediately formed a battle formation and guarded the surroundings. Their movements were quite well trained, and their cooperation was quite tacit. Yu Qianqiu was dressed in black, but he did not cover his face like the others. Only Guan Yu, who was sitting on the horse, was still dressed in a green robe. The wind whistled. Yu Qianqiu looked around. This was the location he had chosen when he was scouting. From a tactical point of view, this place was more suitable for gathering troops than the Spirit Stone mine not far away. Moreover, it was the most suitable place for so many people to advance stealthily. "Follow me in a row." Yu Qianqiu shouted softly. A flying sword gently lifted him up, and he flew along the undulating mountain range. A row of people followed closely behind, all of them moving forward while staying a little above the ground. Guan Yu waved his hand, and the rest of the people quickly dispersed in groups. Only 3 company commanders were left by his side. Yu Qianqiu brought more than 30 people to a call and hid. Ang Kwangsung's Spirit Stone mine was at the bottom of a slope in front of them. They could already hear the shouts of the people inside. If they showed their heads now, they would definitely be discovered by the people on the high ground. He needed to wait for the others to surround the Spirit Stone mine within the stipulated time. Then he would launch a sudden attack. At that time, even if the other party discovered them, it would not be much of a problem. It would be enough to catch them off guard. There were no unusual movements in the surroundings. Obviously, the other people's encirclement had not been discovered by Ang Kwangsung's people. At this time, if someone looked down from the sky, they would see that there were hundreds of black shadows surrounding the Spirit Stone mine. In fact, this method was not very safe. The safest way would be to suddenly appear in the Spirit Stone mine and quickly launch a surprise attack. But the key was that when Yu Qianqiu came to investigate, there was no way to enter the mine. He could only secretly observe from the periphery. He could not run in and leave a positioning mark in a suitable place for everyone to appear instantly. Because Yu Qianqiu had the golden pearl, if he controlled his breathing and remained motionless, it was estimated that no one would be able to discover him. However, if he were to sneak in, there would inevitably be some movement. With his cultivation, it would be very difficult to hide from the nascent soul experts inside. Estimating that it was about time, Yu Qianqiu made a ready gesture to everyone. One of his hands made a gesture of 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Everyone stared at the movements of his hands, and the flying sword in their hands was ready. When the last finger was flicked, Yu Qianqiu took the lead and fiercely flew out of the call on his sword. The 30 or so people below him all flew out in a flash. Yu Qianqiu's mind moved. His fingers pointed to a tall wooden building in front of him. Hundreds of flying swords suddenly appeared around him. Xiao. They shot out like a storm. On the wooden building, there were 2 disciples of Foundation Establishment Stage leaning on it and watching the scenery with boredom. Although their duty was to observe the surrounding situation and prevent sudden danger, no one would think that robbing the Spirit Stone Mine would happen easily. After all, Ongquangsung was not an ordinary sect. The Magic Illusion Palace was an example. When they heard the sound and turned around to find the hundreds of cold lights, it was too late. The flying swords were as fast as lightning. The speed of the flying swords was Yu Qianqiu's forte. It was suitable for a sneak attack. Puff puff puff. The hundreds of flying swords smashed the wooden building on the high road. A few puffs of blood exploded and limbs fell. The hundreds of flying swords quickly returned to Yu Qianqiu's side like locusts, protecting his body. More than 30 people quickly flew over the collapsed wooden building. Yu Qianqiu pointed the sword in his hand at a cave. The information provided by the Enchantress of 100 Charms proved that it was the place where the communication array was set up. The dozens of people shot over at their fastest speed. In the meantime, a few Ongquangsung disciples ran over. However, they were unable to block the fierce attack led by the nascent Soul Stage black-clothed members. With a single blow, several people were already dismembered. Just as a few people stuck their heads out of the cave to see what was going on outside, dozens of people each took out a spirit talisman and threw it in. A series of loud crackling sounds came from inside, followed by miserable screams. Among the dozens of people, a few people immediately guarded the cave entrance. The rest all rushed in. With the sound of movement, Guan Yu rode his horse to the top of a spirit stone mine. He stroked his long beard and pulled out a large flag from his storage pouch. Hi! With a sound, he inserted it into the mountain top. The hero flag fluttered in the wind. This was the signal for an all-out attack. How dare you? Who dares to provoke me, Ongquangsung? A figure flew out from a row of wooden houses in the mine. Then, as if a nest had exploded, all the disciples guarding the mine of Ongquangsung flew out. Looking around, a group of black-clothed people had already surrounded the mine in the mountain. From the stunned expressions of many people, it could be seen that they clearly had not reacted to what was happening. A small black flag appeared in the hands of the third company's commander beside Guan Yu. He raised his hand and waved it. More than 100 people belonging to the third company immediately shot into the crowd from all directions and attacked fiercely. Immediately, the scene of the Ongquangsung disciples surrounding the more than 100 people of the third company appeared. For a moment, there was a flash of light, and the sounds of fighting could be heard incessantly. With a cold snort from Guan Yu, a small black flag also appeared in the hands of the second company's commander. He raised it and waved it left and right. The Ongquangsung disciples who were fighting the third company in the mine were immediately surrounded by more than 100 people from the outside. A massacre had begun. Ongquangsung was immediately attacked from all sides. He was in a precarious situation and could be annihilated at any time. This was a battle without any suspense. The people from Utopia were originally the elite disciples of the top 3 sects in the Orthodox and Devil sects. They had been through a long period of killing in the Demon Ghost region. In terms of fighting, they were top-notch experts among people of the same cultivation level. Half of them were at the nascent soul stage, and half of them were at the core formation stage. After going through military training, they emphasized on mutual cooperation. If one person attacked, there would definitely be 2 to 3 people to help defend. As for Ongquangsung, most of them were at the foundation establishment stage. There was only one person who was at the late stage of the nascent soul stage. That person had long been entangled and beaten up by a few nascent soul stage cultivators. The company commander raised his hand and clenched his fist. The remaining 2 platoons immediately narrowed the encirclement to prevent anyone from taking the opportunity to escape. On the other side, after Yu Qianqiu successfully destroyed the communication array in the cave with his men, he immediately ordered the platoon to ignore the other fights and split into groups of 2 to 3 to search for the miners in the various caves. The miners were disciples who did not have any artifacts, so they had to be captured alive. Those who could not be captured alive were to be killed on the spot. The platoon immediately accepted the order and dispersed. Yu Qianqiu flew to Guan Yu's side. It just so happened that the late-stage nascent soul cultivator from Kuangsung saw that the situation was hopeless and tried to break through the encirclement to escape. Yu Qianqiu coldly glanced at him and shouted in a deep voice, "Kill!" He did not have a good impression of these so-called elders from Kuangsung. The three late nascent soul stage company commanders beside Guan Yu flashed over at the same time, and with a joint attack in midair, they knocked the man down on the spot. The three nascent soul stage cultivators who were originally surrounding him also flew up from below, 3 on top and 3 below. The 6 of them attacked in midair, and the late nascent soul stage cultivator from the Azure Light sect let out a miserable scream and turned into a rain of blood. The 3 company commanders flew back to Guan Yu's side as if nothing had happened. The battle ended very quickly. From the start of the attack to the end, it only took a quarter of an hour. Yu Qianqiu looked at his subordinates in the field. After the battle, not a single one of them died. Only a few of them were slightly injured. With such an absolute advantage, coupled with careful preparation and a surprise attack, they should be able to achieve such a result. Yu Qianqiu nodded in satisfaction and shouted, "Don't hesitate, clean up the battlefield. Take everything you can quickly." The remaining 2 platoons immediately rushed down. At the same time, more than 10 nascent soul stage cultivators flew in all directions to help. The group of people immediately moved. Those Kuangsung disciples who were lying on the ground and dying were immediately stabbed a few more times. There was no need to leave those who couldn't be saved alive. This was one of the subjects in the previous drill. Then a large-scale sweep began. Storage bags and the like were directly pulled out from the corpses. Even a flying sword that had fallen to the ground was not spared. The platoon that had been ordered by Yu Qianqiu to capture the miners escorted a group of people out one after another. These miners were people who were not well liked in Kuangsung, and they had suffered a lot here. During the capture process, almost no one resisted. At this moment, when they saw the corpses of the Kuangsung disciples on the ground, they did not have a trace of pity on their faces. Instead, when they faced the men in black around them, their expressions were filled with fear, not knowing what would happen to them. The platoon leader came over and reported, "Leader, all the miners that can be captured are here." Yu Qianqiu waved his hand to dismiss him. He leaped into the air and pressed down with his palm. His divine sense enveloped the trembling miners, and the platoon of people instantly entered Utopia. He then walked to the side of the Kuangsung disciples who were injured but could still be healed. With a wave of his hand, he sent them back to Utopia. After the entire spirit stone mine was swept, everyone quickly gathered together. Guan Yu took out a small black flag with the word hero embroidered on it in gold. He waved his hand and shot it at a stone pillar. With a ding, the black flag was inserted into it. Guan Yu returned to the team. Yu Qianqiu waved his hands, and everyone disappeared. The spirit stone mine of Kuangsung, which had been bathed in blood, was dead silent. Only the shattered corpses on the ground could prove that a fierce battle had taken place here. Chapter 228. In Utopia's military camp, when everyone returned, Baisuzhen had already led a group of women to stand around them. They were either on the roofs or on the walls, watching over the people who had just been captured. Looking at their dispirited and pained expressions, Yu Qianqiu naturally understood what Baisuzhen had done to them. "I'll give everyone 5 minutes to rest," Yu Qianqiu shouted from the field. When his gaze met Baisuzhen's concerned gaze, he shook his head and smiled, indicating that there was no danger. After fighting with all his might, he felt that his primordial energy had been depleted. He immediately lifted his hood and took out an energy recovery pill and stuffed it into his mouth. Everyone smiled and walked to the corner of the square and began to pour out the spoils of war from the storage pouches. It was hard to tell how many things were stored in the storage pouches, but once they were poured out, it was enough to scare people. Hundreds of people shook out the storage pouches, and the things they collected suddenly piled up like a small mountain. There was a large pile of miscellaneous things, especially spirit stones. Bai Suzhen nodded slightly, and the women under her immediately flew over. They took out their storage bags and began to sort out the items. For example, the spirit stones of the lower, middle, and lower grades were all stored separately. When Yu Qianqiu saw that the female disciples were very familiar with many people in the military, a thought occurred to him, and he nodded to himself. Some of them looked like a good match. It was time to allow them to take root here. Only then would they truly treat this place as their home. The soldiers here should be professional. When they were free, they could go home and live their lives. Only when they had a life would there be hope. It was not a long-term solution to rely solely on spiritual rule. As their spiritual leader, he should consider their future. When the 5 minutes were up, Guan Yu gave the order, and the special forces in black gathered again. Yu Qianqiu looked at the people in front of him and said with a smile, "I just thought of something. I feel that many of our members are a good match with the female members of Ethereal Palace. I've decided that after the completion of this mission, men and women can freely interact with each other during their free time. If there's someone who has feelings for each other, they can look for your instructors to register and become Dao companions. What do you guys think?" Good, good, good. All the warriors cheered excitedly. Some even shouted, "Long live the leader!" Yu Qianqiu was stunned. Damn it. Why do I feel like Hitler? Guan Yu frowned. Why did boss say something like this before the big battle? Wasn't he afraid of affecting morale? Bai Suzhen looked over in surprise. She didn't know why Yu Qianqiu would suddenly have such an idea. The eyes of the female disciples who were tidying up sparkled, and many of them blushed. It was obvious that there was a man they liked in the group. Yu Qianqiu waved his hand. After everyone quietened down, he said with a smile, "Let's make this clear first. It has to be voluntary. No coercion is allowed. Otherwise, I won't let him off. Anyway, Utopia is big enough. When the time comes, I'll mark out a piece of land. Those who become Dao companions will have Ethereal Palace build a house for everyone. Other than the normal training and missions, everyone can live a normal life. Currently, there are more men than women here, but don't worry. In the future, there will be more and more women in Utopia. After this mission is completed, I'll come up with a plan as soon as possible. Long live the leader! Long live the leader!" A group of old men shouted excitedly. "Prepare to set off." Yu Qianqiu shouted in a deep voice. He, who had been smiling just now, suddenly turned hostile. Everyone was stunned and immediately quietened down. The former opened his palm and enveloped everyone with his divine sense. The group of people in the field disappeared. The battle started again. Due to the careful deployment, there were still no accidents this time, and they successfully took down another spirit stone mine. From the situation of this attack, it was obvious that An Kuangsung did not know about the previous attack. This mine was still sparsely guarded. At the same time, it also meant that the battle plan they had come up with was feasible. In less than 8 hours, all of An Kuangsung's spirit stone mines had been looted. Yu Qianqiu wanted to see how An Kuangsung and the other old fellows would react when they found out that all of their spirit stone mines had been looted. This time, they were much more ruthless than the Illusion Palace. Not only had the 6 spirit stone mines been looted, even the dam miners had been taken away. Even if An Kuangsung wanted to start working again, where could he find nearly 1,000 miners? This type of work was not something ordinary people could do. At the thought of this, Yu Qianqiu felt that his anger had been vented. How dare they offer a bounty to capture me? This is the consequence, damn it. Even if you can solve the problem of the miners, you will definitely have to send a large number of people to guard the mines. And the strength you will send will probably not be weaker than this time, right? If the strength is weaker than this time, I don't mind looting again. If I can split a large number of forces from An Kuangsung's old nest, I don't mind going up to An Kuangsung and taking a bite or two of them. Damn it. In fact, the operation this time was not very smooth sailing. During the last battle, something regrettable happened. 2 core formation stage members died in battle, and their corpses were brought back to Utopia. It was indeed painful for Yu Qianqiu. These people were all elites with rich combat experience. In addition, they had been nurtured for so many years. Although 2 people had died, it did not stop Yu Qianqiu's determination to loot the Deluo sect again. With a command, the troops set off again. At a place not far from the Deluo sect's spirit stone mine, Yu Qianqiu put on a golden mask that he had asked Chen Feng to make before he left. According to the agreement with the Allure Beauty, he found the early-stage tribulation passing elder that she had sent. The elder was quite curious about Yu Qianqiu. He did not know what kind of person was behind the golden mask, and he could not see through his cultivation. He had no choice but to put on the mask. First, it was to distinguish his identity from the other team members. Second, he did not want the people sent by the Allure Beauty to recognize him. If he was recognized, who knew what kind of trouble he would cause for appearing in so many places in a day? When the elder saw the black-clothed special forces that Yu Qianqiu had brought with him, he was shocked. This was the first time he had seen such a group of cultivators in the cultivation world, especially after the attack had begun. With a gesture, hundreds of people separated and regrouped. They did not even need to say a word. The tacit understanding between the attack and defense was simply amazing. In the cultivation world, a person could leave his back to others without any worries. Just how much trust was this? Before the elder made his move, he also put on the black outfit that Yu Qianqiu had given him. Naturally, he was afraid that the people from the Deluo sect would recognize him as an elder of the Phantom Palace. After he fought with the Deluo sect elder, Yu Qianqiu's troops went all out. Since 2 of their comrades had died last time, this time, they were as ruthless as they could be. They would not let go of their opponents until they were completely out of breath. Once the aura of breaking 1,000 armies was unleashed, it would be incredible. The Deluo sect, which was originally thought to be much more difficult to defeat than Ongquangsang, was unexpectedly faster than Ongquangsang. However, Yu Qianqiu's idea of leaving as many people alive as possible to bring back to Utopia was shattered. All the Deluo sect disciples who were guarding the mine were killed. The battle on Yu Qianqiu's side had already ended. The 2 tribulation stage cultivators fought from the sky to the ground, and from the ground back to the sky. Seeing that the elder sent by the Allure Beauty was unable to defeat the Deluo sect elder, and even seemed to be at a disadvantage, a few nascent soul cultivators rushed forward to help. However, something unfortunate happened. The difference in strength between the tribulation stage and the nascent soul stage was like the difference between heaven and earth. The Deluo sect elder swung his sword in the air, and a sharp sword light slashed out. 2 of the 4 nascent soul cultivators who rushed forward immediately turned into a rain of blood. Yu Qianqiu's eyes were bloodshot. He roared crazily and called the remaining 2 people back. Then Bai Suzhen, dressed in white, appeared in the air. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.